One. Folks, welcome to the Random Generated Party. And as you can see, we have generated a truly random party because we'll get to the regulars in a second, but our extra today in the center square, for those of you who remember such, is none other than Joe Bloch, the Greyhawk Grognard. This is what you get when you don't know what's going to come up, right? These are the gifts you get. Next to Joe is Rob Conley,
sporting a fancy Greyhawk map behind him.
Yes,
it's a digital map, and I'm posting the dialogue link so you guys can download it for yourself.
Oh, okay, nice. You might need to put that in a private chat so I can link it. I don't know if you're able to.
Okay.
I don't think they fixed that yet. Below me, with the black and white artwork that is, familiar but not.
Name that artwork. Come on. I did talk about it in one podcast. Joe, you know this?
Isn't that the logo from it looks like something from Judges Guild?
No, it's actually from one of the old Warhammer fantasy RPG books that lost the Tome of the Damned or the Lost in the Damned or one of those. The best thing about those books, they have some amazing art, and I loved that picture. It's fantastic. So I scraped it for my image there. It's better looking than me, so I figured, what the hell,
And next to Joe, with the blinged out Mr. Potato Head,
there you go,
is none other than Greg Christopher.
Hello. I am also more attractive than my potato.
You're a spud. Not a spud, mind you, just a spud. So, Joe, thank you for joining us.
Absolutely, man. I'm looking forward to this. Joe has a Kickstarter that Eric, you started a podcast when it started. You did one with him, or a YouTube show, I should say.
Yeah, and making myself. Yep.
Yeah, and then now we got one because it's finishing up in 2 days.
Right. Yeah.
Sunday night. That's it. The big night. Where are you at with that? I know you've made the goal by far.
We blasted past the goal on the first day. We are, I think, more than 3 times goal. We're going to get lots and lots of really great art for this. Nice. This is my third of my Orange Spine books, and this is going to be a supplement for Lovecraftian horror in Money.
I love it. I love the Orange Spine too. I'm looking over at my shelf now. I got most everything you put out. I got the Book of Lost Beasts, and the Book of Lost Lore in the Orange Spine. It's a reminiscence of the old AD&D stuff. And the Tyrannic Tome. Remember that thing?
I have mine on the shelf behind me. Yeah,
fantastic book. Yeah. This is going to be fun, guys. Because what we're gonna do is I requested Joe to come here because we have the foremost expert on Greyhawk, and then we have the foremost expert on the Wilderlands. And so, Joe, Rob says the Wilderlands is better than Greyhawk. Let's get ready to rumble.
Oh my God!
Actually, I loved the Wilderlands back in the day. I was a huge fan of the Judges Guild. I had all the stuff. I had all the magazines. I was a big fan of it.
All the Pegasus, you and all that.
Yep, Pegasus and all those.
Nice.
Yeah, and my first campaigns were run with this very folio right here. That, thanks to Tim Shorts, I still have in my hand.
No kidding. That was his. He bought it.
No, I bought it. I gave it to Tim. And then Tim goes one day, Rob, would you like your Greyhawk folio back? You know what, Tim? Yes, I do. So I got my Greyhawk folio.
Nice.
The maps are...
The Darlene map? Is it still together?
More or less.
Amazingly resilient map, I got to say. Better than the Wilderlands maps.
They're holes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there always holes in the corners, but yeah.
Oh, no, yeah. It held up very well.
I had them taped up.
Yeah, we all did.
I did not. What I did
really?
I had the folio maps, and then of course I got the World Greyhawk box set, which is essentially the same maps.
Yeah.
But my folio maps, I thought at the time, this was high school, I thought that since you could erase grease pencils from leather, you could erase it from a map.
Oh.
and my party of players up in the Poconos were taking over the the wild coast, the wildlands. Yeah,
Wild
just
Coast.
just south and west of Greyhawk, and I was using the grease pencil to map out their advances, and then went to wipe it off and wiped off the ink off the map.
Oh,
It was I was like,
Jesus.
Yeah,
Right.
you can't see it on the camera, but yeah, I ran into that problem too, Eric.
oh, I wasn't alone. Okay.
See, I had mine laminated.
Nice.
And-
That's the smart move.
Well, there used to be at Gen Con way back before it was in Indianapolis, back in the 80s. There was a guy who would go to Gen Con, and he brought his laminating machine. And everybody would just drop your maps off with him at the beginning of the con, and by the end of the weekend, you'd pick them up.
That's amazing.
And people would bring maps just to bring to him.
That's amazing. That's an awesome thing.
Like all the
Who can
war
afford
gamers
that?
would do it. You know, I had all my War in Europe maps. I had him laminate.
Yeah.
You know, a whole bunch of stuff.
Shit, I had a hard time finding a fucking photocopier. I had to go to like the library for 15 cents a page. You know, it's that crappy paper that barely you can see what the hell it was.
Yeah, I went down.
Character sheets.
I went down to the print shop to get some report that I needed printed fancy like for a class, and then I was looking, and the guy was pulling off this huge laminated sheet. I said, "Can students use that? Pay for it?" It's like, "Yeah." Well, what's the price? And he gave me some totally, utterly reasonable price. I was there the next day with my Waterland map. I got all 18 of those suckers laminated.
Nice.
In fact, the laminate is so freaking old, it actually kind of peeled apart now.
Well, hey, at least you got a chance to do it.
Yeah.
My school had none of those. The only thing I had going for me in the high school, early college days, my father worked for the phone company. So he would, if he was working like the evening shift with no supervisors at all, he'd be like, "You need anything copied?" I'd be like, I'd give him different goldenrods, and I'd come back with like a box of like 500 sheets. I probably still have some of them in the closet.
Jesus.
Only the front. They weren't double sided, but really the back. Did you really care?
I still got the old basic. You know, the back of the Menser box had the character sheet. That's the one I brought to the library or to the local convenience store that had a 15-cent copy or two. I bring that down there, and as it got more and more stained on the back of the book from use and dropping it on the table, it had crud all over it. There was like little spots over the later character sheets that I had to photocopy. Jesus, man.
Yeah.
Joe, why Cthulhu? Just a smooth segue. Why Cthulhu?
Boom. I have been a fan of H.P. Lovecraft since I was a kid. I still have in a drawer, I have a story I wrote in 7th grade that was like my pastiche of Lovecraft.
Wow.
So I've been an enormous fan for forever. And I've been thinking, over the years, the stuff that was in Deities and Demigods was good, but it didn't really go far enough. And once I did the Book of Lost Lore, it got me thinking, okay, new classes, new races, what else would fit into that category? What could I make an Unearthed Arcana of? Mm-hmm. And it just naturally it just plugged right in because it's got classes, it's got monsters, it's got races, it's got spells, and there's a ton of material out there to draw from, even if it's just the Lovecraft stuff, which my book is, because you can't use the Clark Ashton Smith stuff. You can't use a bunch of the other stuff because it's all still copyrighted.
Yeah, the newer stuff. Yeah.
Where did you go to make sure you can use which stuff, to find out which stuff you can use?
It is tricky, but almost all of the Lovecraft stuff is wide open. So I just limited myself to just H.P. Lovecraft, and I found that doing that actually opened things up for me, because Lovecraft would only do a couple of, like, sometimes it would just be a name and maybe a sentence. Where in some of the, in the later works, it's been enormously expanded and enormously filled in. But all I'm working with is the original. So I can take it in a completely different direction. like the relationship between the King in Yellow and Hastur and things like that. You know, that's all been way developed and filled in, but I was able to just do my own. So it was actually gave me a lot of creative freedom.
Now, most people think Cthulhu and they think role playing. They think, of course, Call of Cthulhu, right? So you have a certain. I recently, because I was running a little thread of that through my campaign, and I'm like, I'm just going to grab a bunch of Call of Cthulhu books, monster books, everything, and just the older stuff, newer stuff, and just run with it, and sort of integrate it into the 5e thing I'm doing, and it played out okay. I mean, I was able to grab stuff, and it worked okay, but. When you compare your stuff to that stuff, there must be differences, I would imagine, right? Big differences.
It's completely different. I mean, set aside the fact that, what I'm doing is made for swords and sorcery, right? Mm-hmm. It's not a 1920s gangster thing. It's it's made for a first edition game. Mm-hmm. And first edition has certain expectations, right? There's a certain format that things work in first edition. Monsters have a certain layout. There's certain expectations for alignment and magic items and spells and the way magic users and clerics work. So you have to plug in the material into that existing framework, which is a completely different framework than you see in basic role playing and Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah.
So, in that respect, because I'm using that different language, even though we're coming from the same source material, it ends up being enormously different.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I noticed that when because I got the book that I guess Call of Cthulhu people put out, Peterson, to make Call of Cthulhu 5e. They 5e-ified all the monsters. Yeah, good book. But
I love it. I love Call of Cthulhu.
Me too. It was just a fun game, but I thought it failed on spells because pretty much everything was summoning. You know what I mean? It made it kind of a boring thing. I had to add in more stuff basically to the priests than just summoning stuff. I had basically priests as in 5e plus summoning out on top of it. That's the only way to do it,
Right. So and you see that a lot of that in when you go back to the original stories, there are a lot of things that that are in those stories that apply themselves to spells that you don't normally, you might not recognize it, but when you're reading the stories, and I read the entire corpus when I was getting ready for this.
Okay.
And when you're thinking in first edition terms, you're thinking, okay, that would make a great magic item. That would make a great spell.
That makes sense. What are we saying, Rob?
So if you say it's more than sword and sorcery, so is it more like a Conan, not with Conan, obviously, but more like how the Cthulhuid elements are in Conan, because Howard used some of that in his Conan stories, or is it there's like a sword and sorcery investigation thing going on?
No, it's not an investigation thing at all. It doesn't use the tropes of Call of Cthulhu. This is you're bringing in a Lovecraftian element into a regular first edition game. So imagine your Wilderlands campaign or your Greyhawk campaign or your Realms campaign, and you want to bring in cultists of Yog-Sothoth, and you want to bring in Nyarlathotep and things like that. That's what this is aimed at.
Don't say that 3 times. You know what happens. Come on.
Candyman.
Mike is here. Bad Mike and Tim, Gothar's Manor is here. What's up, guys?
Hey.
Now, go ahead.
All right. Bad Mike is having a conflict. Dallas Stars Game 6 and the round.
Well, I mean, roll a d20, see what wins. Obviously, that's the only solution to such a problem.
If I could jump in and ask, I've never read any of the Call of Cthulhu stuff. I've only heard about it secondhand from everybody that I'm connected with in the gaming community. So imagine you got somebody, like me, or somebody who doesn't even have the basic, preliminary level of knowledge that I do. How would you kind of pitch this? What's going to be different about playing with this than playing with regular first edition?
The difference is that the Lovecraftian stuff really has a different approach to horror, and I have a whole section in the book about this that I call Cthulhu in a land of demons. So
that's a good way to say it. I like that. Yeah, because that's what we were trying to figure out: evil versus horror evil, right?
Right.
Yeah.
You've got you already have demons and devils and daemons and beholders and illithids and things like that. So how do you differentiate a cosmic horror like Cthulhu or Hastur from something like that? And the idea is that you make those figures as completely alien and indifferent to the demon lords as they are to humanity. They don't care who they're stepping on. They've been around for literally billions of years. And to them, even Asmodeus is a flash in the pan.
Yeah.
And a figure like Cthulhu, who is working on a cosmic scale and whose timings are determined by the turnings of the constellations, on the scale of hundreds of thousands of years. It's a totally different mindset than something like Orcus or Demogorgon. You can, as a human being, as a person, you can understand Asmodeus's motives.
Yes.
Right? You know what he wants. He wants power. He wants to manipulate things. You can grasp the motives of a beholder or a mind flayer or a demon lord. You literally cannot fathom what Cthulhu wants or why he does what he does. He might seem completely random to you, but he's working on such a different level, literally a different plane of existence, where geometry literally changes, and there's non-Euclidean geometry in the city of Relay, because he is in a completely different dimension and thus thinks in a completely different manner than even the evils that you're used to. That's what sets it apart. It is literally incomprehensible.
Now, how do the demons, how would Grazit, how would Orcus, how would Asmodeus, for that matter, view Cthulhu? I mean, you can't imagine evil things like that being horrified, right? In some way. How do you approach that?
That is exactly how they would be.
Yeah.
Because they are as stumped by the motives of the great old ones and the outer gods as we are, because they think, at least on some level, they think the way we do.
Yeah.
And since they're incomprehensible to us, they're also incomprehensible to those evils and to the great good things too, right? Saint Cuthbert or Mitra or figures like that. They're also completely baffled by and terrified because they don't know what they can't plan around this. They don't know what the motives are. Nobody does.
It makes it amazing to think about. There might be an alliance between the Church of Cuthbert and the Church of Orcus against Cthulhu. You think about that.
Well, it wouldn't be so much an alliance against Cthulhu. It would be like Cthulhu is more than a force of nature that has sentience of a vast scale. But I mean, I'm going to disagree a little bit about demons. I think there would be demons who would be totally against messing around with Cthulhu because they know the consequences of it. But just like all the stories that Lovecraft had, invariably involved cultists doing insane, batshit crazy things with one of the elder things, just because they think it can give them the power they want. I'm sure there are demons out there who are doing the exact same thing. But other than that, the way I always view Cthulhu and his ilk is like they are forces of nature that have sentience. You don't really role play with them, but they're not like a hurricane either, where you just roll on a random weather table and it's over in a few hours. No, these guys are doing whatever they're doing, and God help you if you run afoul of them.
I just posted the link to the Kickstarter in the chat, by the way.
Great. Awesome.
Okay. And I think I put it up there before, too. John Miller has a question for Mr. Bloch.
Great question,
I'd like to hear Joe's thoughts on similarities or differences between Lovecraft's mythos and the figures of Tharizdun and the elder elemental god in Greyhawk.
Especially Tharizdun. That's a good question, man.
Yeah. Okay. This is a complicated one because we know
We're going deep, guys. We're going deep.
Yeah, we know what we know from what they've told us that both of those figures were inspired by Lovecraft. and Rob especially was a big Rob Kuntz
Yeah.
was especially, you know, that was kind of his thing. In fact, in the original Greyhawk campaign, he had they put a temple of the old ones, a Cthulhu temple, between the city of Greyhawk and Castle Greyhawk, that the players in the campaign could get to, and they actually had a Cthulhu cleric class, which I would love to see what that looked like.
Really?
But in terms specifically of Tharizdun and the Elder Elemental God, I think of the two, the Elder Elemental God comes closest to the Lovecraftian ideal, because it is very inscrutable, because we have so little information about it, right? We know it's and it goes way beyond tentacles, right? A lot of people just think, oh, Lovecraft, it must have tentacles everywhere. No, this is not that. It's more of an attitude and an inscrutability. Tharizdun, on the other hand, while he started off with a lot of Lovecraftian elements, over the years, because he's been so defined and so used a lot, he's kind of lost some of that mystique.
Yeah.
And especially in the novels, in Gary Gygax's Gord the Rogue novels, he's really brought down to just petty. Another
petty. He was very petty. I noticed that he got at the end. That's how he came across. I'm like, he's a little bitch, and I think he was supposed to represent TSR, whoever was it, the woman who took over. In my head, I'm thinking that because that was his fuck you, right? I mean, I asked him that one time. One of the very few interactions I have with Gygax. The whole thing of destroying Greyhawk was his fuck you to TSR, right? So it was like, yeah, there you go. So I imagine if Tharizdun maybe represented the evils, the Blooms, and the what's her face who took over. I don't know.
Yeah, Lorraine
Williams. That's right. Yeah.
The other Joe's brother Michael says, wasn't the Elder Elemental God a farce?
If by that you mean, didn't it turn out to be, that was just another name for Tharizdun? They did do that in Return to the Temple of Elemental Evil, but it was bullshit, and I don't accept it. So
hated it totally.
Yeah, that whole module was just nonsense.
Shit.
And,
what was that? I didn't quite. What module was that?
Return to the Temple of Elemental Evil.
Oh.
Yeah, it was a big volcanic ring. It was.
I mean, whatever it is, I mean, it's just like some of the sequels. 20 years later, it doesn't beat on your favorite TV shows from your kid. The original is always generally better.
Oh yeah, and plus Han shot first, so there you go.
Well, Han shot at all.
Yeah, true. Man. So, Joe, when you're doing this, you come up with stuff for priests, for stats. And I'm really interested because I'm starting a second edition campaign probably around this summer, and my setting already has Cthulhu-like elements. And what I've been doing, it's in Forgotten Realms. Sorry, sacrilege here. But
I like Forgotten Realms, too. I'm not...
It's a decent setting, and I play with it so much. I just use the first edition gray box version.
That's the best one,
since.
Yeah. Good choice.
It's the best. It's really, and the first few supplements, like Scavenged Frontier and Waterdeep in the North, the first few were really good. So that's all pretty much grabbed onto. But I made the Kraken Society essentially the cult of Cthulhu. All right, I just completely changed it over, and that's what it is. And the Kraken is just a server, a servitor of Cthulhu. And so, bottom line is, I'm shifting from the 5e game when it ends in a couple months to a second edition game, and I am going to be using Cthulhu because they're already integrated into my campaign, and so I'm going to be using your book as soon as it comes out. I'm going to use that stuff.
It should work fine with second edition. That's
what I figure. It's basic. I mean, you could everything works fine. Yeah, and once you're into that area of the game, it's perfect. And anybody worth their salt can convert it up to 5th edition if you're playing that too. It's not a big deal. But going forward with Cthulhu in the campaign, I was wondering what you did with the priests of Cthulhu and all the gods, because that's the big thing they're going to see in my game is, the priests and their followers and their cultists and some of the deep ones, servitors or whatever, and boom, how are we going to deal with that?
There are two there are two new classes. There's the cultist, which is a subclass of the cleric, and there is the scholar, which is a split class of the magic user.
Okay.
And of the cultist, there are 11 different specialty cultists. And I used that for that. I used the model from Greyhawk, where in the gold box, you would have like a priest of St. Cuthbert would have his own spells and a couple extra benefits, or a priest of Ayuz would have special things that he could do. All 11 of the cultists have their own unique spells. A few of them have special abilities. So it's variations on the theme that are specific to whatever cult they're serving.
So what are the various gods you're using other than Cthulhu? Are you doing the minor gods as well? Hastur and all that sort of thing? Well,
let me read you the cultists. I've got the cultists of Azathoth, Cthulhu, Dagon and Hydra, Ganatathoa, Hastur, Nyarlathotep, Shub-Niggurath, Starry Wisdom, which is actually another cult of Nyarlathotep, Sathogua, Yig, and Yog-Sothoth.
Nice. That's you got them all in there.
And you can use, and there's a lot more. If you want, you can use these as a model.
Yeah.
For all. And each of them has, I think, 6 or so unique spell. Each one has a bunch of unique spells, plus a common pool of spells that all cultists get.
Okay.
And there's also the scholar, which is a split class. Remember how the thief acrobat?
Yeah.
You'd be a thief up to this level, and then you'd split off and get extra benny. It's the same thing with this, except you're paying as of 7th level. You decide I want to become a scholar, and that gives you access to a whole new list of spells in addition to your normal magic user spells. You're paying. You just have to pay more to go up in level.
Related to being a scholar, like research abilities, things like that.
Right. You get exactly. You get skills to do research. But you also that lets you cast and learn all of the spells that you're going to find in the Mythos Grimoires.
Gotcha.
So when you get the Necronomicon in the book, it tells you the Necronomicon has all this, and this, and you can also get these spells in it. So only if you're a scholar and you're paying extra to go up on those levels, that's when those Mythos Grimoires will really come in handy, because then you're really starting to learn new spells.
Now, if you choose not to use the Cthulhu stuff, but want to use that scholar variant, or magic user scholar, does it help you with the regular Adventure Dark and Deep campaign?
All the scholar spells are really geared towards the Lovecraft stuff, but you could add them in. I mean, sure, you could use these spells in a non-Lovecraftian game. You'd have to make a few adjustments, because some of them are like, specially geared towards the different gods. There's a whole section of like commune with Hastur, commune with Yog-Sothoth. You'd have to, you'd probably want to swap those out with a god in your campaign. But yeah, it'd be doable, certainly.
So you have Cthulhu, Yog-Sothoth, Hastur, the King of Yellow.
Well, the King in Yellow is its own special thing, because the King in Yellow is a demigod who is a servant a servant/ally of Hastur.
Okay.
And they're both at war with the My-Go, the fungi from Yuggoth.
Okay.
I got to relate this story because so I was inspired. I read this series of blog posts a couple years back about the King in Yellow, and I actually, and I'm not going to say it, guys, I wrote a LARP event around it.
Ding, 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 ding. Whoever has it within 45 minutes, you win the prize.
Yeah. Okay, now shut up, Joe, and let me tell my story. So, nobody would let me run it because, first of all, the way the LARP's event run is you run something Friday evening and Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening, and wind up Sunday morning. So Friday evening, the opening of the event, the opening act basically kills everybody in the camp. And we're talking about 20 to 30 players all dying. It would have been a total horror show. But I would, by the rules of the LARP that we were playing, I would have killed them all. We were playing a bopper LARP, so there would have been a sport. So then the rest of the event was them waking up in the King in Yellow's home plane, and they would have to have they have, in order to escape and return to their bodies in the normal world, they have to perform the yellow play. So the whole event. Yes. I owned a Nero chapter in Northwest PA for a time, but I make that pitch to my group, and they all look like I was batshit crazy. So hope that doesn't demonetize us. But anyway,
dude, I drop fuck all the time. I just haven't done it yet.
Kill everybody? You can't kill everybody, Rob. What happened about that guy who runs into the woods and hides out in the woods? I got a plan for that. But anyway, that's the most I ever done with Cthulhu stuff. It was a lot of fun writing it.
By the way, the link is up in the chat. I will put it up on the screen occasionally, and of course, you can look. We've gained at least one backer during the show. I believe that was Zach.
Yep.
I may be able to turn it into a module. I mean, it requires DM balls to just really slaughter the party in the first opening minutes of the session, and then the party's going to have to.
Are they
not going to? Most players I know would not be like trying to put on a play, even if it's just role playing.
Didn't they do that at the beginning of Vecna Lives or something? Like they wiped out. Like the first chapter is you fight Vecna and he kills everybody. And then the rest of the
or anything that
I'll have to check it out.
runs at a con.
I just posted something. Somebody was asking if in the chat there whether or not Joe's book he's talking about here, the Cthulhu book, is OSC with first edition, whatever it is, and it's definitely old school. So It's an old school thing. And I also mentioned that Joe wrote his own system, Adventures Dark and Deep.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And it's a beautiful system. I got all the books for it. I'm looking at them right there. And basically, it's a great system that's based on Gary's vision of second edition, right, Joe? Is what he thought, what you think he would have had if he had his druthers?
Right. That was the original core Adventures Dark and Deep books. I've kind of moved into I've kind of pivoted into using Adventures Dark and Deep as a way of doing supplements for other games.
Okay.
But those core rule books are still out there. Yeah.
Yep.
So not to stir the pot here, but why didn't you make all the neat ideas that are Adventures Dark and Deep as an Osric supplement?
Well, that's what. Originally, I didn't do it because part of Gary's conception, as he listed it in the Dragon Magazine articles, was he wanted all the rules in 3 books again. So, in order to match that vision, it had to be its own thing. But to answer your question, that's what the Book of Lost Lore is. If you're running Osric, buy the Book of Lost Lore, and it'll just plug right in.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Same with this, or the Golden Path of Justice, Golden Scroll of Justice. All those things are intended as add-on stuff for a 1E old school game. So if you're playing Osric, this will work with Osric. So will Book of Lost Lore.
So the next time those Knights and Knaves guys complain about nobody doing anything with Osric, I can just point to you now.
It doesn't say Osric because I didn't want to use the Osric license, but yes.
I don't know. Osric had his own license. That's kind of weird.
It's got a requirement. You got to put some verbiage in it, and I'm like, I can't do that for every game that's out there that this will work with.
Yeah, they're really big on preserving Osric as is. They don't want people to do what I did with Swords and Wizardry and use that as a foundation and come out with their own system.
Interesting.
Yeah,
because Osric is there to be a compatibility. Foundation, basically. It's all it's there for, is to mimic, to
preserve the AD&D system in Amber in a way that people can publish supplements for. Adventures.
And again,
campaigns.
Rob, when I found the OSR, and when I first saw Swords of Wizardry, months after I first saw Swords of Wizardry, I was seeing hacks of Swords of Wizardry being published because it was a very open license to allow you to do so. And then the fact that I believe the Swords of Wizardry core rules are out there in RTF file format. It's made for house ruling.
Yeah.
It's made for hacking. It's awesome. So
no, that's right. It's about what's Rob's game face is based on, right? So yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah, the only thing you need to do to cite compatibility with Swords and Wizardry is put the little ascending AC and bracket next to your regular AC.
Yeah.
Right, and I refuse to do that. So that's why I can't do it.
Damn you!
You purist bastard! You.
Oh.
You only do the regular.
That's the hill you're gonna die on. Okay.
That's fantastic. We all got to pick a hill. We all got to pick a hill.
That's fine. That's the whole point of the whole doing stuff with open content.
But like Joe said, it'll take you 3 seconds to do it yourself.
Yeah.
This will work with just about any old school game.
Yeah, you can.
That's what you need to know.
I mean, Joe,
as if the cover wasn't, indicative on its own.
Well, Joe, there's a book out there for that Peterson or whoever, Call of Cthulhu people put out. It converts it, like I said, to 5e, right? Now, it's based on everything that he has a license to, which I'd imagine is different or slightly different than yours.
Chaosium has licensing agreements with all kinds of estates and authors and stuff like that.
And so they're putting everything into there.
Plus, they have a lot of their own IP over the years. They've they've added stuff to the, so they have an immense amount of stuff that they can draw from, which is why I had to limit myself to Lovecraft and a couple of authors from the 1970s.
Yeah.
So I missed who has a bunch of licensing?
Chaosium.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Now here's the follow-up is you have a 5e version of the Call of Cthulhu. It had to make Call of Cthulhu imported into the 5e game that they put out that I look at, right? And used for some stats and whatnot. Now, it tries to bring, it fails to do so in any real sense of the word. It fails to tell you how to bring Lovecraftian horror into 5e. It just puts them out there as like stat blocks. You know what I'm saying? Right. I think it failed on that front. Now, your game is more. Yeah, go for it.
If I may, it lowers it to just another monster manual.
Yes, exactly. That's all it is. Right. And some priest spells and blah, blah, blah bullshit, right? Now, it also fits the 5e aesthetic, right? In the sense that it's just a high fantasy adventure game, right? And so it just, like I say, it doesn't change any aesthetic. Your book, however, is based in the swords and sorcery aesthetic, right?
Right. Well, so the 1E aesthetic. Let's put
the 1E aesthetic,
make that clearer,
which is more swords and sorcery than 5e is certainly. It's 5e is more high heroism. So this is a long-winded prelude to a question.
Very long-winded.
And why would you ever consider putting out a 5e version of this to bring the Cthulhu horror and the swords and wizardry or swords and sorcery old school 1e kind of style play into your book? In other words, is there a market there for it? Can you make this a 5e version?
There's absolutely no way I could compete with Sandy Peterson's book.
Oh, yeah.
It's just, he's got this big doorstopper of a book that mechanically does what that book you're describing would do.
Yeah.
It's the only thing I could add is advice on how to use it properly. And
maybe
I could
that's
already
what you put out.
I could make a pamphlet, and say, hey, if you're using Sandy Peterson's book, here are some tips. Or I could make a video on my channel and just say, hey, if you're doing it, you might want to think about doing it this way. In fact, I might.
That would be real.
Let me write that down.
You're right, but here's the thing. I think you could, what we're talking about is basically doing the Adventures in Middle Earth treatment to 5e version of Cthulhu. Like Adventures Middle Earth didn't just post a couple monsters and a couple classes and then end of the day. They went through 5e top and the bottom and made a Middle Earth role-playing game out of it. It's quite good. I think there's room for if you ever. It's going to be a lot of work because I've worked with 5e myself, and it's a more work to deal with it than it is. What we do is Classic Edition. But if you're into it, I think there's totally room for you, and I think you'll get your 600 backers that you got, at least 600 backers for that 5e version.
Well, we need to tip that
done right.
We need to get 2 to hit that magic number.
You'll be there.
That's true. You'll get there by tonight. Is that refreshed, Eric? I wonder if we added some. How many did you get before we started? Did you mark it or no?
We added one.
Okay.
We added
there
one.
You go. All right.
The one that we added, that was Zach.
All right. Good job.
Can we get a taste of the what would be in the pamphlet, Joe? Like, what is it? What is it? The way that you would describe the environments, describe the events that are happening that would be different, from say going into a cave with goblins in it.
Well, that's kind of what I was describing at the beginning of the chat. Is the attitude that it's really inscrutable. But I want to. James had a comment there that I wanted to hit on, which might actually help answer your question. Do the cultists really understand that the Cthulhu entities, or are they just lost in misguided dreams? A lot of times when you're in my book, when you're interacting with the gods of the Cthulhu mythos, and there are spells in here that you can summon them, or you can commune with them, or things like that. They are almost as likely to destroy the person who's trying to interact with them as they are to help them, depending on the circumstances and various other things. So one of the other things that I always thought was very interesting about Lovecraft's work in general, and this is something that I think a lot of people miss, is that the characters in his stories, they're not driven mad in the conventional sense because they've seen something horrible. They have been shown a window into the actual nature of reality, which is so different than what everyone else around them accepts as reality, that they're labeled as insane, when in fact all they're doing is approaching the world in the way they know it to be true from their personal experience, which is so at odds with what everybody else knows that they're deemed to be insane. If that makes sense.
It does. Your mind has changed. To
Right.
you, 1 + 1 equals maybe 2. Sometimes maybe 1.5. That's
Right,
that's the kind of thing.
Your perspective has been so warped by seeing what true reality is like that everybody around you thinks you're nuts.
That's interesting. And so, how would you, like Greg said, instead of
I was about to say, how would you present that? Would it be kind of behavior that it makes sense in some like cosmic GM way, that like the goal of this thing is some objective, but it's beyond the idea that the players would even think that was the objective? Or is it that they're acting like a demented, like it's just Clockwork Orange every day? Like what? Well,
it depends. I mean, the different entities are going to be approachable in different ways. For example, Nyarlathotep is actually of all of the other gods in Lovecraft's work, he's the one who's actually more in tune with humanity. He actually, he appears as a human, and he interacts with people on a somewhat normal basis. And then you've got completely alien entities like Azathoth, who just have it's unlikely that they're even aware that the rest of the universe exists. In terms of how, I think the original question was, how do you actually show that in a game?
Yeah. What's a room description related to Cthulhu look like?
It's exactly the same. Except the way it's, how to put it? What's the best way to put it? The room itself is the same.
Well, I think it's all like it's slightly.
Is it the things? Yeah, sorry. Is it things that you focus on? Like I mean, when I run Alien, right? It's totally different from when I'm running D&D. I'm describing things. I focus intensely on light, sound, the way that things that are different. I would never focus so much on how the light falls through the room in a D&D game. But in Alien, it matters because something could be hiding in the shadow in the back corner of the room. And by describing it that way, they don't know what's over there. So on. Like how?
See, for me, it's less about the description of the room than it is about the behavior of the characters. So I wouldn't really focus. I mean, the room itself is the room itself, or you're in the castle with the cultist or whatever. It's the behavior of the cultist. There's just something ever so off about it. And as a DM, there's all kinds of different ways that you can communicate that of making players, or I should say, making players uncomfortable. You can, as you're role playing an NPC, you can get uncomfortably close and maintain eye contact. There's ways you can role play that to transmit that feeling of unease that these NPCs are exuding. And in fact, there are spells in the game that a cultist naturally exudes a sense of unease. There's actually a spell called Cloak of Ease, which hides that.
Yeah.
So that they appear normal on the outside as long as they're under the influence of the spell. It's kind of like what you see in the story, The Shadow over Innsmouth. Where there's really no overt. I mean, there's later in the story there is, but at first when he's just walking around the town and he's trying to figure out what's going on, nobody's like attacking him or hunting him down or anything. But you get these impressions of you feel like you're being watched, and the people just kind of stare at you as you go away, and they don't blink as they do. It's that more kind of atmosphere that works on the Lovecraftian level, rather than how does what do you emphasize in the 20 by 30 room? It's more about the interactions between the PCs and the characters, the NPCs. Or the creatures, because the creatures are also going to be acting in very different ways than you might expect. For example, the fungi from Yuggoth, the My-Go, their goals are understandable on one level. They want to conquer the universe. Right. But the way they go about it is so subtle and intricate, and wheels within wheels within wheels within wheels, and they're always they're laying traps, and they're impersonating people and stuff. So you have that kind of a level of intricacy and a way that the monsters approach things that you can really work up to ratchet up tension. I hope that answers the question.
Consider the Shadows over Innsmouth. So what's that? So we had this guy investigating Innsmouth, and he actually has relatives there. And throughout his investigation, he discovers things about his family history. Then by himself, and by the end of the novel, he's pretty much one of the cultists. He's one of the things he's investigated. But in a nutshell, if you're trying to wrap your head around, Innsmouth, the town, is basically a breeding ground for these deep ones.
Right.
And often the people who become deep ones, they don't know it because they're born as ordinary humans. It's only later in life. But there's this moment where they either sense it or they're just outright told. Either they commit suicide or just kill themselves or do something batshit crazy, or they accept it. Now they start helping their relatives get over through their realization, so they can all at the end migrate back to, and the city that begins with Y that I can't even begin to pronounce, but go back there. So you can play that really creepy, but that's the kind of thing you can use in your head as a framework in order to base the creepy stuff that you come up with as a referee.
Well, and I see we've hit 600. Thank you so much.
Very good.
Thank you, Tim.
$5.99 was Tom from Tabletop Tap Room. 600 was Tim. Tim
Shorts. Nice. Somebody asked the question there: how do you get players interested in this kind of horror in your game? Should it be a totally separate campaign? What I did, I can only tell you what I did, right? Like I said, in Forgotten Realms, I converted over the Kraken Society into the Cult of Cthulhu. Their whole purpose is to bring Cthulhu back. The way they do it, the mechanism I made up in my head based on Cthulhu horror shit was deaths of sentient beings, right? So basically, they have altars all over the place, buried, secret, wherever. And if priests start chanting, if the Cult of Cthulhu causes the death, that energy from that soul gets fed to Cthulhu. And once Cthulhu hits 100%, Cthulhu's back, right? Ryleth is raised from the ocean and blah, blah, blah. So their goal is to cause death. The most basic way to do that is to ritual sacrifice, but that's one at a time and it takes forever and you get found out, right? So that's the most effective, purest way. Anything less than that, you need more of a mass scale. So they're behind a lot of wars, right? And so if they cause the war, then my rule is that if they cause the war, the energy from the deaths of those wars goes to feed Cthulhu coming back. And as long as there's a lot of altars and priests chanting and whatnot in the area where that's happening, they channel the deaths from the war, from the battles, from wherever into Cthulhu. That's how I integrated it. And so while there's a huge war going on throughout the world, the secret sinister forces behind it, as the players found out, were actually the forces of Cthulhu. And so all those souls, anything that they need to prevent not only the war but any future wars and stop the sacrifices. That is how I integrated Cthulhu into mine. Joe, have you ever integrated it into Greyhawk at all? Have you ever done something like that, or in any way?
Well, I did do my own version of the Temple of the Old Ones.
Okay.
Quite a while ago. As soon as I read about it, I had to make my own. Even with the entrance with the tree stump and the entrance through the sewers and stuff. And of course, I did some playtesting of this stuff. But in terms of a long-term impact on the campaign, I've not really done it on that scale because I'm always so obsessed with the Temple of Elemental Evil.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. As am I. That's my favorite nostalgia-wise. I mean, you look back now, there's some flaws, yeah, but nostalgia-wise, that's it, man. That's my happy place. That's my sweet spot.
But it's funny you should mention the human sacrifices, because there's actually a rule for human sacrifice in the book. You know how some spells, when you cast them, you age?
Yeah.
You can actually use a human sacrifice to obviate that.
Ooh, that's delicious.
Yeah. So if you make a human sacrifice at the time you cast one of those spells, you don't age. You give up the life of the person. Plus, there's some spells in there that the material component is a human sacrifice.
Okay. All right. I mean, the last people that got involved with that in OSR lore was the Carcosa guy. You think you're gonna take shit for that or what?
Look, it's Lovecraft.
I know.
It's gonna be.
Gotta have it. Put on your big boy pants. You're in Lovecraft territory, baby.
Yeah.
Any advice? Interesting, Tom. Any advice if I wanted to integrate Cthulhu into Star Frontiers or a sci-fi game? Does that look like Alien? I don't know. I mean, it's
bear in mind. His icon is a Yuzirian.
A who?
A Yuzirian, one of the 4 playable races.
Or a Yaz, as they're now known.
Yes.
Oh yes, because we have to de-Yazify our sci-fi game. Did I just say that? Holy shit!
You did.
Agree here.
So the thing to remember about Lovecraft Cthulhu mythos work, that it is much more science fiction than it is fantasy. You have alien. I mean, Cthulhu is not really a god in that sense. He's an alien. He's an immensely powerful, immensely long-lived alien being. We have the My-Go, who have a base on Pluto, on what they call Yuggoth, and an interstellar empire. We have the Great Old Ones, who are able to time travel mentally.
Yeah.
It is when you think about it, Lovecraftian stuff is very much sci-fi. In a lot of ways, it fits better into a sci-fi game than it does into a fantasy game.
Really? Yeah. That's true.
So plugging it into Star, I don't know. Honestly, I'm not a big Star Frontiers person anyway. But I mean, thematically, it should work fine. You've got these alien races that are completely inscrutable. You've got these immense alien, powerful creatures who have motives that born of having a lifespan of 1 billion years.
Yeah. Interesting.
Are there any outright? I thought there were some science fiction movies that were mostly indie that were based on Cthulhu mythos.
Oh, there's a bunch of movies. There's a bunch of independent ones, and there's a bunch of big studio ones. The most recent one was The Color Out of Space.
That was good. If it's
I liked it. I really liked Color Out of Space.
Yeah.
I thought it was really well done. There are others that are not so well done. There've been a bunch.
It's hard to find them.
But there's also something called the H.P. Lovecraft Film Society, I think it's called.
Huh.
And they did a bunch of of adaptations of Lovecraft's work, and you used to be able to get them on Netflix back when Netflix would still send out discs.
Yeah,
you could rent those discs, and I burned through all of them. So some of them were excellent. There's also a silent adaptation of The Call of Cthulhu, which it's just supposed to be what a movie of that would have looked like in 1929. And it's amazing, and I think you could still get that on DVD. So yeah, there are a ton of Lovecraft adaptations out there. Some much better than others. A lot of the big budget ones are terrible. But like I say, Shadow out of the Color Out of Space was excellent, and
it was well done. It was well done. The best.
Does Color Out of Space take place in a spaceship, or is it on Earth?
Farm.
It's in rural New England.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it was a farm or something like that, or maybe it's the one I'm thinking of is a different one. But yeah, the best movie I saw that was Cthulhu-ish that also kept my attention recently. That was at the decent. It was Cloverfield. Remember that one?
I never saw it. I know
really?
of it, but I never saw it.
Yeah.
Which Cloverfield? The one with the monster, or the one?
Yeah, the one that came down from the sky and just ripped through New York City out of nowhere, and it was taken from like somebody had a camera recording the whole found footage. Yeah, and so it was pretty good. It had the same sense of like mindless horror. Like if Cthulhu showed up in New York City one day, what would happen? You know what I mean? It was just like out of nowhere in the middle of somebody's party. All this shit goes down, and it was just like the city being torn apart, and they're nuking it, and nothing worked, and blah blah blah. Yeah, it was that kind of a thing. It was just a pretty good movie. You sit there like engrossed in, like holy shit, you know. It was the same thing as the witch movie. What was that called?
The Blair Witch Project.
The Blair Witch Project. Yeah, same kind of style. Same kind of style.
Bad Mike recommends The Resurrected from 1991, starring Chris Sarandon.
What was the one with Sam Neill? There was a Sam Neill one that wasn't too bad. I forget. Yeah, Mouths of Madness. I think that's the one I'm thinking of.
Nice.
This one was a retelling of the case of Charles Dexter Ward. Okay.
I've been listening to a couple of Lovecraft. And once I heard your first show, Eric, with you guys, I was like, I got to listen to some of this. On the ride to work, I got like an hour drive, so each way. Right. So I'm like, I'm going to pop on YouTube. And there's a lot of free people just reading the freaking books. And it's really awesome. I mean, what was the one down in Antarctica? That was my favorite. And yet I can never remember the fucking name.
Oh, At the Mountains of Madness.
At the Mountains of Madness. Yeah, I'm halfway through that one. It's just, you sit there in the car and just listening to the description of this guy and the way he writes. I mean, it just sucks you into it.
Oh, yeah.
From the first person point of view, it's awesome.
A lot of people really ding him for his prose because it's so flowery and so over the top. I love that. Then again, I like Gary Gygax's writing, and I think there's some parallels between the two.
Oh, definitely. I mean, Gygaxian is right up there with Lovecraftian, I think. Yeah, in a lot of different ways. Yeah.
So I'm looking at Color Out of Space plot synopsis. You know, that could be easily a Star Frontier adventure taking place on a planet. You know, most of Star Frontier stuff are more planet side adventures than spaceship. So I could see that really adapted for a players investigating this farmer's weird meteorite, and mayhem ensues.
Yeah. You break that into Gamma World. If the meteorite also has radioactive capabilities, you bring it.
Yeah, but I mean, would the Gamma World people even know that it's Cthulhu? I mean, they're so used to the weird mutation stuff.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So,
maybe,
Joe,
Giant Lands. No, never mind.
Giant Lands. Joe, a quick segue to Greyhawk, because I know you've been playing Greyhawk since the Folio. Right?
I was actually doing Greyhawk before the Folio.
Really? Holy crap! Just based on Dragon magazine articles or whatever.
Well, based on the stuff in the Dungeon Master's Guide.
Yeah.
When in the descriptions of the artifacts and relics and stuff, my game, it was a homebrew game, but it had a Barony of Lum. It had all the names from the Greyhawk campaign that were in the DM's guide. I worked into my campaign.
Nice. So now, Greyhawk, you like the original stuff. My Greyhawk sweet spot is all the Carl Sargent stuff. Loved Is the Evil, loved the Marklands, loved everything he put out, basically, even the stuff he didn't put out, even the Undying, right?
I love Vivid the Undying.
Amazing book.
At the time, I wasn't too great a fan of it, but I've really grown to like the Carl Sargent stuff.
Yeah.
It's not nearly as awful in my view as a lot of people make it out to be.
No, and just the way he wrote, the way Carl Sargent wrote. I'm trying to remember this, and I was about 45 minutes before the show started. I tried to find this essay. There was either an essay or an interview with Carl Sargent, and I cannot find it anywhere. Maybe you know where this is, but they were talking about how he wrote things like, He is the Evil and the Marklands and everything, and he broke it down to such a Kissinger style realpolitik view of how to do things. This is how shit happens in the real world. Therefore, apply these principles to a fantasy world and shit will happen in the same way, without getting all clown kind of crazy about it. Right. And so his approach to this so fit my preferred style of running it that I've effectively been running a version of like the From the Ashes and the Greyhawk Wars over and over again in various campaigns. It was such a foundational thing for me in terms of a DM and setting.
Are you telling me, Joe, that he put in the toilets?
Oh, no toilets that I found. But he wrote on the political level. He wrote in the City of Greyhawk, the Folk Feud and Factions book.
Well, he talk about toilets.
There you go. There you go.
The obligatory 10-card tavern toilet. With the 10 crap happening, I guess.
This goes back to our why every dungeon should have a place where the hobgoblins take a shit conversation we've been having forever here. So yeah. But do you like
pits and chamber pots, Joe?
The privies are implied.
Implied? You need somewhere to go.
It's just a hole in the floor. It's all you need.
I always have
toilets. Eating the garbage.
Even if it's not a toilet, it's a corner where all that works take a shit. I always have that somewhere in an adventure. You can guarantee you're going to have a shitter in my adventures. But in terms of From the Ashes, what changed the most about the style of Greyhawk, Joe, between the original stuff and From the Ashes? What do you think was the biggest change in style, feel?
Well, the biggest change in the feel and the nature of the campaign is when you had the gold box, everything was in balance.
Yeah.
Right. You had evil kingdoms. You had good kingdoms. They were opposing each other. There was kind of a tension there, but neither side was. You got the impression that neither side was ascending, and either side could come out on top.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, when Greyhawk Wars comes out and everything changes, then evil is ascendant.
Yeah.
So in that respect, it drastically changed the feel of the campaign because it went from neutrality is king to evil is king.
Mm-hmm.
And that changed the nature of the game because when neutrality is king, then you have room for morally gray adventuring. You have room for pure exploration.
Interesting.
Whereas in a game where evil is ascendant, the implication is that the PCs are there to fight back against the rising evil.
Then that fits the second edition style. Remember, swords and sorcery before first edition and older, right? But because of the satanic panic and all that crap, they had to make a good versus evil. So that would fit completely the reason.
Exactly. And that's also where you start to see the decline of location-based adventures. Because a location-based adventure is an exploration adventure. You hardly see any of those anymore after, at least in Greyhawk, after the wars. It's all, how are we going to stop IUs from doing this? How are we going to stop this evil over here? How are we going to stop this evil over there?
Yeah.
I got to tell you, I was not a fan of Greyhawk Wars. Even though it wasn't my main campaign. No, look, I'm a fan of how Harn did things. Harn defined the world as it was in the year 720 by their reckoning, and everything since then fits in that time period. It only has deepened and broadened that world of 720. And my whole sentiment is, I am quite capable of blowing up my own campaign world. I don't need somebody to tell me that. And so what that does, and the reason, I flirted with the idea of returning to Greyhawk a couple times, but part of the reason that held me back was when I look at the third edition resources, that they have, and the 2E resources. They don't spend a lot of time in the time period that I'm interested because they moved on. They moved on to the Greyhawk War. They moved on to the post-Greyhawk War. And so they give all that short shrift in the favor of year 598 or whatever. It's like, so, it's like, I didn't like it.
I didn't like the wars. I liked the From the Ashes material, because there was a dearth of Greyhawk material before.
Yeah.
So, and again, Carl Sargent's writing was great. This is back in the day when, to be honest, there were very few authors of material that I actually paid attention to.
Mm-hmm.
Carl Sargent was writing stuff for Greyhawk. He was writing stuff for, oh God, I got this. I got the.
He was doing Warhammer. He did. He
Warhammer
did that
stuff.
famous. That
Part
famous.
of the Enemy Within campaign.
Yes, he did. He did a lot of that.
So I mean, he really was like one of those authors that I kind of would see. Oh, the name on it. Well, I don't care what it's for. I'm picking it up because I expect I'll enjoy it, which is
gonna be good. Yeah.
For the internet, before we were able to literally fanboy over this author or that author, and then they had a social media presence. What you found out about Carl Sargent as a person was not it. And I think when he stopped writing for game material, he just fell off the map. So it's a shame. His stuff was good.
And that's what happened. He really just did fall off the map. He disappeared. And I remember asking Eric Mona, way the hell back. I said, dude, whatever happened to this fucking guy? Where'd he go? And there was always rumors. He got hit by a car. He died. Nobody knew what the hell happened to him. He just dropped off the map. That was kind of weird.
So Bad Mike comments that there was never enough Greyhawk material. I mean, the Living Greyhawk pulled. I mean, whether you think of the quality or not, but in terms of the stuff to mine, Living Greyhawk has a ton of stuff out there.
That's the problem with it. There's too much of it. That turned the Living Greyhawk stuff is such a fire hose of material that it turns it into the Forgotten Realms.
Yeah.
There's just too freaking much. And as you allude to, the quality was iffy in a lot of places because they had such an overwhelming need to churn out new adventures all the time that it was impossible to maintain quality control.
That definitely, the Greyhawk shit was terrible, but except for the Sargent stuff. I mean, the Carl Sargent.
Well, I count Living Greyhawk as its own thing.
Okay, yeah. I never got into that, but Joe, for me, the Greyhawk Gold Box, I didn't have the capability to develop the worlds and the countries. I didn't know enough. I just was unable to do it, and so Greyhawk was just big, wide open sandbox that I was too dumb to figure out. That's why Forgotten Realms filled in a lot of blanks in a lot of areas. And it's like, oh, here's more content I could play with. Give me the content. I need more. I can't make it up on my own. So when After the Ashes came out, I was like, this is it now, or From the Ashes, rather. This is it. Now I can finally make use of Greyhawk. So I liked it because I had no preconceived notions of what it was before. So that's what it did for me, if that makes sense.
For me, the biggest problem with the Greyhawk Wars is the name. I don't like the idea that it had to have one overarching, there are the Greyhawk Wars. They're all happening now.
Yeah.
Why can't we just have, okay, Nairon and the Great Kingdom are at war over here, and then there's another war going on over here, and the giants are attacking into Joff here, and why I don't understand the need to kind of bundle it all together into a single, the entire continent is at war. Mm-hmm. It's always at war.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be anything special. I mean, the Iron League has been at war with the Great Kingdom for 100 years. Ayuz and the Horn Society have been at war with Voluna and Furiondi for years. The idea that it was somehow, this is a special event in the Flanness, it didn't make a lick of sense to me. It makes a lot more sense to just treat them as, a lot of big, massive wars erupted, rather than one big thing. And then we're going to have the Peace of Greyhawk.
World War II.
World War II.
I mean, it started in 1937 with Japan attacking China. Then it led to a European conflict, and then it led to Japan. I mean, a lot of World War II, when even at its height in 1944, I mean, it really was two separate wars, one versus Japan, one versus Germany and its allies. But people
didn't Italy start it even earlier in Eritrea in 35?
I say 37 when Japan attacked China. I mean, you could make a case for Italy attacking Ethiopia, but there was peace after that. So, but after Japan attacked China in 37, they just never stopped fighting until 1945.
But medieval wars were never conducted on that scale or with that level of communication or coordination or anything like that. I mean, if you look at
magic, Greg.
I mean, we have video games dedicated to the period of where you're fighting relentless wars. They're just not.
They didn't have teleport and ESP spells for instant communication.
It's not like World War II. You build up your knights and your infantry, whatever, and attack your next door neighbor. You're not getting in your 100 carrier, sailing around the world to fight Japan on the other side of the ocean.
Well, the other better example is the 30 Years' War. That was a whole set of conflicts going over 30 years, and people just said, "Oh, okay, let's just call it all the 30 Years' War."
It's 30 years. It's close enough.
And the Napoleonic War, that was a bunch of separate conflicts all rolled into one until 1815.
Joe, by the way, was nice enough to link this in a private chat so I could put it up. And Joe, you're scary when it comes to remembering shit that I've put up.
This came from my Google search. I can't take credit.
All right. This is from November of 2014. And, of course, who am I quoting in this? But the great Joe D. asked the following question during tonight's game session. Whatever happened to Carl Sargent, the man who defined Greyhawk for AD&D 2E? Does anyone know? And the first comment comes from Joe Bloch. Apparently, he dropped out of sight once his experiments in parapsychology were shown to be a fraud. So, interesting times. And
I didn't know he was a Ghostbuster.
I completely forgot that.
I think that, just to stay within the topic, but people, if you don't realize, those of us that have been involved in this community for a while have been connecting on multiple levels for a while.
Yeah.
Joe's blog for Joe Bloch, Joe the Lawyer's old blog, Wondrous Imaginings, Rob Conley, Bat in the Attic, Greg Christopher was hugely active on Google Plus.
I think that link to my name there probably goes to my old Google Plus account.
Yeah, I'm sure it's dead now. This doesn't exist. But, I mean, there are naysayers. And with all due respect, I'm going to give a signal to the naysayers. This is a community. And we don't agree on everything. We never have, and we never will. But the ability to have this.
I'm going to disagree with you there.
Right, exactly.
Oh.
But the fact that you can disagree and still have friendships is what true life is about, right? It doesn't matter. We forget that on the internet. I truly, that's my opinion. So many people forget that on the internet because it's all about my opinion, and I don't have to listen to yours because it's a one-way conversation. But I just want to thank Joe for pointing it out, and thank Joe Bloch for being the first commenter 8 years ago.
8 years later.
Oh my God, it's like reading my own blog. I sometimes I will go back in my own blog and I'm like, wow, I completely forgot I wrote that.
Yeah, right. Or how stupid was I back
then,
right? That's more often than not. The hell was I thinking?
I believe, speaking of old blog posts, I believe I'm the guy. I was the guy who coined the term the howling emptiness of the 30-mile hex, and I'm still seeing them quoted.
No shit.
They don't refer back to me, but when people talk about
Bastards.
Greyhawk, invariably somebody said, "Oh yeah, it's the howling emptiness of 30-mile hex. You got to fill those 30-mile hex with something."
Yeah.
And I remember I turned that around and I said the ineffable grandeur of 30-mile hexes.
Ineffable grandeur.
Yeah. I remember I replied to that post of yours.
that's a country. 30 sometimes a small country, right? On some level, you could have, a duchy at least, at the very least.
Yeah.
I think you need more. What's your preferred hex then, Rob? And Joe, what would you have on a map? What's your preferred? Each hex equals X miles.
Depends on what I'm using it for. I love the Darlene map in the 30-mile scale if I'm looking at a continent. If I'm doing something for my, for like an overland wilderness adventure, 3 miles.
3. All right. What do you like, Rob?
I'll use either 5 miles or the Harn scale. If I'm going to more, describing an entire region for campaign, I go with 12.5 miles because that equates to 5 hours of walking, so 5 leagues. Call an hour and a walking a league by my scale.
All right. Greg, what do you do?
I use 12-mile radius. I'm pretty sure that's what we're saying. Radius is 12 miles.
Yeah. Well,
because in my system, the standard like if you're average dex and you spend your whole day walking, the farthest you can get is 24 miles.
24 miles. So you do 24
miles. So that would be
hexes.
one whole hex across.
It's 24. Yeah. So I always like the 6 because I figure you get 3 discrete. I always go for 6, 8. You can either do an 18 or 24 miles a day, right? So you can either get 3 or 4 discrete encounters within the day. That's kind of why I like the 6-mile hex.
Okay.
Well, I looked up.
It has no center hex, Joe.
I looked up a bunch of military stats on like how long it took them to take certain amounts of moves in different environments and so on.
That's sure Romans are fastest,
and people moved way faster than I thought. Because a lot of times you imagine like how fast you're going to be able to move with like your mom in tow, but if you've got 8 built guys with light backpacks, you can cover a lot of distance and in one day. Yeah, so
I know they've done studies on like hunter-gatherer peoples who can walk like insane amounts per day because that's what they've been doing all their lives. Like something crazy like 40 miles.
Yeah, walking is actually the preferred hunting method of humanity for most of our history. You just walk, you just follow a deer until it overheats because it can't sweat and you can. So if you follow a deer or a rabbit, eventually it overheats and can't run anymore, and you can just kill it with a rock. You could go out and hunt tomorrow using that method, Joe. It works.
I'm not gonna go. Oh, you meant the other Joe? Yeah. No, dude. One flight of stairs does me, and there's no way I'm taking a deer down just by walking after it. So yeah, it ain't gonna happen.
And you're
Joe, I found
able to cut it. Sorry.
So, Joe, I found your ineffable grandeur of 30-mile hexes. And apparently I first uttered it on a podcast. I posted a link in private chat. Eric can post it in the YouTube chat. But
Rob of the Google Foo.
Rob, the purveyor of the Bat in the Attic blog and designer of numerous excellent old-school RPG projects. Thank you, Joe. He recently reminded us on RPG Circus podcast of a flaw he found in World of Greyhawk.
John Miller has a question for you, Rob, as I go find the other stuff. Speaking of the howling emptiness of hexes, Rob, when are you going to publish your Wild North supplement? Or perhaps an omnibus of your various hex crawls?
I am in the process of doing it now. I am halfway. It's going to consist of 4 maps, 12 inches by 18 inches.
You want a preview, Rob? You can do a share screen if you want to pull it up.
Yep. Just give me a second. I have 6 hard drives, so.
Jesus.
I am paranoid about backups. I have files dating from 1991, so.
I'm on the cloud now. About a year and a half ago.
The only time I lost something when somebody freaking stole my computer.
I lost them when I spilled water, man. The tiny part of a teaspoon, a drop, hit my thing and then shorted the entire thing out. And of course, I was not on the cloud. $2,200 later of retrieved the shit off my hard drive. Everything's on the cloud now. Don't fuck around, man.
Yeah, I got one drive and I love it.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer. I can get it from my phone from anywhere. Yeah, it's perfect. And with that, $7 a month or whatever the hell it is, and you end up with Microsoft Suite. No, easy. Definitely easy.
In my case, for a while, I was like, oh, you know what? A nice laptop is all I need. And then my cat puked on my laptop keyboard. And thankfully, nothing went wrong. But I realized I'd rather have her puke on my keyboard and have to replace a $99 keyboard than have to replace, a $1,500 laptop. So I was like, all right, that's my excuse to buy myself a desktop.
All right, almost there. Now I got to go back to the.
So, question for Joe from John Miller: do you use a more detailed, small-scale hex maps for your own Greyhawk campaign, or only the 30-mile hexes?
That's where I got the 3-mile hexes. I've got a whole on my hard drive. I've got a very detailed map of the whole environment between the Cron Hills and the Aber Alls on a 3-mile scale. And that's what I use for my home game. It's got the the gnarly forest and all that other good stuff. It's and the 3-mile scale lets me have like, I can have a woodsman. This is where a 20 woodsmen live in this hex. And it gives me a level of granularity I can work with.
It's nice.
All right, so this is what's going to be coming out hopefully this summer, no later than this fall. But it consists of 4 12x18 maps. The double lines you can see is where they overlap, and it basically combines the Wild North adapted to this setting, Black Marsh, which is here, and the Southland right here, plus a whole bunch of new material, which is right here. And you guys already adventured in it once. You guys adventured down in here, the Shrouded Woods, Woodford, Cover's Crossing. I don't know if you guys remember that, but
all right. Where was the Potato Lord adventure at, man?
The Potato Lord adventure was up in these mountains, the Green Ridge Mountains.
There it is, which inspired Greg's icon there. Rob called it the Russet Lord. And we're like, what the fuck is a russet? We're all thinking potatoes. That's all we know about russet is potatoes. So now it's the Potato Lord adventure is forever going to be known.
So this is the template I'm working on. I'm still going to tweak the code. I have an entire grid superimposed this. But basically, so I'm still going to tweak the coastlines a little bit so to make sure I don't have like this little tip. It's on the map and everything else is water. But so all the areas in white are my current existing products, including a few maps that I haven't published yet. And so this is going to be in the aftermath of the Judges Guild fiasco. This is going to be my setting, and I have it all gridded out. I have a huge hex grid.
It's all homemade, right, Rob? All of it's home, everything, right? From scratch, you drew this?
Yeah, I mean, with this, I'm doing a new technique where I use a real world map and I will zoom in and use a section of real world terrain, especially for coastlines.
Yeah.
So, for example, this is actually the coast of North Carolina, but at a different scale.
Oh, so you're bringing Norway or something in there too, weren't you?
No, but I brought in Wales right here.
Okay.
And this is the coast of Turkey, part of the coast of Turkey. So
I think I see the boot of Italy down there.
Alba looks a lot like actual Alba, just turned on its side.
But I find doing that gives a lot of detail for me to map over.
Yeah.
And it's nice when I have that.
Nice. And you think this summer it's all going to be done or out?
I believe so. Yeah, it's going at a pretty good clip. I had to make a bunch of tools to fill in the gaps because I have like 120 new entries to make that are in this area that I haven't detailed before.
Mm-hmm.
So now I got those tools and I am pulling the clip, and I can show you a preview of the rough draft. So this is the draft. It's going to be it's not going to be 4 booklets like the Waterland. It's going to be 1 booklet. It's going to have 4 chapters. it's going to have the supporting the initial chapter. Then it's going to have the Great Glacier, which is going to have terrain description. Then it's going to have islands, including the island of Frick and Frack, which are home to warring tribes of gnolls.
That's good.
For those with Black Marsh may recognize the mountain that fell, the Isle of the Withered.
Nice.
And then it has lairs and ruins, all combined in one thing. And then finally, we go into settlement. One thing I'm doing different compared to Black Marsh and my other one, I'm including a little military roster.
All right.
Interesting. Kind of Greyhawk there.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, I always enjoyed people. Not all the groups, but some of them try to carve out their own land, and so they need to know what the the military situation is.
Mm-hmm.
So now, Rob, I got to ask a question for you. Again, Greyhawk related. Are you going to have updates on your blog as to what the military movements of these different settlements are, like Dragon Magazine had back with Gary? We're like, oh, okay, Fernie is mustering troops.
Interesting.
That's
kind of cool.
I mean, I could, but
kind of cool. A history as it goes.
I haven't decided. I'll put that on the. I'll put that in the hopper.
No, just I was like, I
mean, I do this for my. You guys will experience a little of this when you guys hook up with my city-state campaign that I'm about to run. But
looking forward to that.
So let me quickly get this. My writing. Just a Guadaland. Yeah, all my files. I think it's let it to be in maps.
Just don't pull up the porn, Rob. That's all I ask.
Oh God, that's why I can never open my hard drive to the fucking public like Rob is doing. It's just
it's just
it would not be pretty. It would not be pretty.
So I like doing these to organize my thought. I really don't expect my players to remember it, but I do better rather than writing a big old history. I just make a timeline map. So this was the situation in 4460.
Yeah.
And this is the city-state civil war, and this is the present day when you guys are going to play.
Oh, that's cool. That's a
Didn't
visual history.
Ed Greenwood do that in a magazine art in Dragon a long time ago? He was talking about how to create a setting in a generic, very high level sense.
Yeah.
And one of the things he recommended was back in the 80s, take the basic map that you have and make a whole bunch of photocopies and then mark out in like 50 or year increments all the different changes on the map. And that way you have, by the time you're done, you get this dripping with history effect.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah,
I always love those
if you can focus on, okay, hold on. Let me see if you can focus on me. Let's see, is this it? No, it's not it.
I love those college, and we had these historical map books in college. It was fantastic.
Yep,
you could look at how was it back then. I wish I'd saved that book. I really enjoyed just looking at it at night. It was just because you get a sense of history. You get a sense of what happened here and why.
But you want us to just all Rob? We got
just
all
Rob.
Rob.
Oh my God.
Okay.
Rob likes long walks on the beach and firelight dinners and
swipe right. All right. So am I in the camera view here?
Yes, you are.
Yes, you are.
All right. So this is what I did back in the day. So
are we gonna see what your background going?
This is something I drew up. This was Rob's original setting. So I had the habit of using Waterlands and Greyhawk and Harn. But on the side, periodically, to my shame, I never actually ran it. But I had this is all ideas of my own. I didn't kit bash anything together to make this. So to organize my thought, I drew a base map. And I drew by hand. I photocopied, and before I filled it out, I made a photocopy and photocopy a whole bunch of these blanks.
That's cool.
And to organize my history, I made these.
See, Rob, I'm not sure what scares me more, that you went and actually did this, or you could find this.
You know,
Yeah,
at a second's notice.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, well, it's from that. It's not from a lack of trying. I mean, Tim told you the story about my stuff flying out of my car, so
yeah, that's fantastic.
it was a little touch and go there.
Chasing him down the street.
So I just happened to have this in there. This is something I actually cried a little about. I made a Harn style map of Blackmore.
Oh wow!
And this is the only remnant. Somehow I lost it. I even used with my dad.
Burnt
just
on
got
the side.
Yeah,
my dad just got a labeler, so I even had it professionally looking label on it.
Wow,
were you chewing on this one, or was it?
Got hungry?
No, I didn't really take care of it because it was just a photocopy. I just slapped it on the photocopier for the thing, and I had the base map was 24 inches, 36 inches wide by 24. Huge sheet of paper I got from
that's the stuff you save. That big piece, if you ever get one when you're a kid and broke, you save that shit for the big thing you're gonna make. It's like, this is the good paper, this is the big piece of construction paper that you got, and so you just save it because you don't want to ruin it for some bullshit thing, right? And then you just never fucking use it.
Oh, are you seriously, Joe? You're gonna go there? Like, never.
Right. Don't kick the hornet's nest, Joe.
I know.
Right.
Let me quick change the subject, Joe. What is your next project?
right there.
All right, James Seymour has a question for everybody in this room. What are the books in your reading room? Like, what books are you reading now or about to read? What's in your pile? Joe Bloch. We'll go around.
At the moment, I'm rereading Heretics of Dune.
Nice.
I'm trying to go through the new ones, and
okay,
and I want to kind of build up to the new ones with the old ones, so I get the continuity.
Rob,
I am reading. Let's see. Subtitle's a little bit of a mouthful. I'm reading 2 books, one mostly at work because it's short stories. I'm reading Thieves World, because guess what I'm going to be running in a few weeks. And I'm reading Why the West Rules for Now.
Okay.
Which is a book about why, about the clash of civilization, why some civilization prosper and why some don't. And this one, the author goes back to prehistory to start the analysis. So a lot of it's going to be useful for campaign building.
What I found interesting was they're still publishing Thieves World novels.
Oh God,
Jesus, they are.
Really?
As of a couple of years ago, they were still coming out with new Thieves World books.
Holy shit!
Good for them, but are they any good?
I have no idea.
I don't know. I gave up around, I think, the 6th volume. Joe, what are you reading?
I am reading a book I just got called Hitler's Monsters: A Supernatural History of the Third Reich, and it's an occult history plus more. They talk about everything that was going on early on prior to Hitler and how a lot of that stuff was used, all the Madame Blavatsky stuff and just the clairvoyance and the psychic readings and everything else that went into it, and why it was a fertile ground for a lot of the propaganda mythology that Hitler used in his, to get people on board with his shit. It's just creepy as shit, man, because I got fascinated by the whole thing. It's by Eric Kurlander.
Yep. Yeah. I know it.
Greg, what are you reading?
Sorry, I was on mute. I'm reading a sci-fi game called M Space. That's a D100 system.
Oh, I think I saw that one.
Yeah,
nice.
It's I'm just reading it for ideas.
Okay. Pretty cool.
Actually, half-assed question I asked before to not kick the bee nest, but I know one project at a time, Joe. But what's your next thing? What's your next Kickstarter? What are you working on or planning next?
God, don't ask me about my next Kickstarter because I'm still not done with this one.
Any ideas for projects?
Yeah, my next project, I'm doing a series of modules in Not Greyhawk.
Yeah. Pre-Hamlet, all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and the next one is mostly done, and it's due out in August. It's called Into the Great Rift. I will leave it to your imagination to guess where that actually takes place.
So I got a question for you, Joe. What are you going to do if Greyhawk becomes a permitted setting for DM's Guild?
I'm going to take down my free Greyhawk books and I'm going to slap them up there.
Put a price on them.
I'm gonna build them up with art and I'm going to publish them out there and
change some names. Yeah, change some internal names.
Literally, I've got 900 pages worth of Greyhawk stuff.
Jesus Christ.
For 5e. I'm going to sell that shit as hard as I can.
God bless.
Yeah, I'm thinking of doing maps, in my Harn style for Greyhawk.
Well, I've also got I'm also doing all the, Beyond the Flyness stuff. And all that'll be 5e-tized very, very quickly if that ever happens.
Do you use
have 5e stuff waiting to do?
Do you use Anna Meyer stuff maps at all?
No,
she was great.
No. I do my own maps in the Darlene style, and you can actually print them out, and you can just tape them onto the edge of your existing Darlene map.
Oh,
and they're PDFs on the blog right now.
You use hexographer for that? I know his whole that's what he based it on, the Darlene style.
That's what I use hexographer for that. Yeah.
I remember he reached out to me so fucking long ago. He goes, "Hey, take a look at this. Not, just is this like legal to copy?" I don't fucking know. I think I'm a lawyer. What the hell I know, man. But as for my, I don't fucking know answer. He sent me a free copy, so I was like, "Yes, it worked."
But it's Joe Wetzel. It's Inkball Designs. It's Joe Wetzel. So we should bring Joe Wetzel on. Had 3 Joes.
It's a great program. All his stuff is great.
It's amazing, and it's cheap. And he's been developing it for at least 10 years.
I
think.
Yeah,
it's well done.
His encounter decks, I have literally been given with my old gaming group out in Long Island. I was given I'm not in the mood. I'm not in the mood to run anything today. It's like, well, we're already here. Yeah, you want to do your Swords of Wizardry Light shit? I'm like, okay. The good thing I got one of Joe's decks on me, and I shuffled it, pulled out 2 cards, said, which one do I like? All right, everybody go out and take a smoke break or whatever you got to do. Give me 10 minutes, and I had a full 3-hour session. So
smoke break, ship break, whatever kind of break you got to do, just get it done.
It's like you just give me a moment, man.
Yep. No, that's good, man. That's good. Joe, how I see Temple to me, I've run it and or played it so many times, and I played the video game a million times, right? That when they came out, that Circle 8 hacked and made it even better. Now, when you run it, I imagine you bring in Tharzadan, right? In some way, you bring in that tangent or anything like that.
Well, not Tharzadan. I bring in the Elder Elemental God.
Okay, all right. What do you do? What's different when you run TOE? What do you do that's different than as written?
Oh man,
and not exhaustively, but just overall. You know what I mean?
Well, I keep what a lot of people say are typos with Lolth. Yeah. I keep those.
All right,
because I want there to be Lolth is nosing around in the temple, and she's got a couple of people under her, who are in her faction too, and there's also the actual Elder Elemental God has an altar in there underneath everything else. But mainly the way I do it is I emphasize the factions, and I give the players, because I've done this a bunch of times, I give the players opportunities to join the factions. Like you don't. The worst way to run Temple of Elemental Evil is for the players to just go in and start slaughtering everything.
Yeah.
That is the dumbest, boringest slog you will ever do. What you want to do is you want to encourage them to infiltrate the temple by joining, maybe 3 of them join one faction in the temple and another one joins another one. And, when they go to the moat house, they let Lorith recruit them. And you need to insinuate yourself into the temple, find out what's going on, and then you can destroy it from the inside.
What do you do with a good paladin or a good cleric of good with that kind of thing?
But you have to give them a chance. You have to give them the opportunities, A, to know that there are factions.
Yeah.
And B, to use those factions, to enter those factions and let them work against each other. That's why I did my T0. Was like the journey to Hamlet. Mm-hmm. It's a module, another free download on my blog, by the way, where the different factions each control different groups of bandits. So as the PCs are going through the gnarly forest, they're attacked by one faction, which is loyal to, one group of bandits was loyal to one faction, and then there's another one, and there's a tower, and it kind of gives the setup for it.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of running as a DM, giving them the opportunity to use those factions is key.
Okay.
Because even just, letting them know that they're there isn't enough. They have to be able to get inside, and you have to give them those openings, because players are dumb and they won't take the most obvious entry that you give them. You must push them through.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Speaking of Hamlet, I ran Hamlet for GURPS, and this
how'd that go?
I actually, it went quite well, and I have a special bonus for everybody, for Tim, if he's watching. This is a Tim Short original from the 1990s of the village of Nob.
Can we make that bigger, Eric? Is this you drew this map?
Oh, wow.
Look at that. That's pretty fucking good. That's the 90s?
From the 90s. And that's the village of Nob.
No shit. You see his style.
We didn't like the map in the Temple of Elemental Evil, so he spiffied it up.
That's nice.
And I went really went all out. Like this is one of the GURPS character sheet for one of the two traitors that are spies.
Mm-hmm.
I think I changed the name, so that's why you probably won't recognize the name.
GURPified it, basically. Yeah.
Devos,
wasn't one of them named Devos or something? I forget what the hell it was.
Yeah, but I managed to make a 11 by a tabloid photograph, and it was the first time. One of the reasons I did it because I was learning PageMaker, so I actually laid it out.
Oh, nice. Okay. There you go.
Hamlet was the best starting village ever, I think. Only close competitor would be Phandalin in the new 5e early starter edition stuff.
I have so wanted to do a 25 millimeter version of Hamlet, and then I actually worked out how big it would have to be.
Yeah.
And it's like I'd have to have like a 20-foot long by 30-foot table to lay it all out. I did the math on the how long. It is a dream that shall never be fulfilled, I'm afraid.
There you go.
I'm still
wondering. I hear you. I have a lot of Dwarven Forge, but even I can't cover all of Hamlet.
I mean, I see Zorpazorp. You guys watch the Zorpazorp's channel. He does terrain building, and he's done this ginormous Minas Tirith thing. And he's got the Pelennor fields, and it goes up to Minas Tirith, and he's got he's got huge sections of walls and everything. It's well worth checking out Zorpazorp. But even that is nothing compared to the size of that simple village.
Yeah, the only thing I added to Hamlet in my take was I set up a tension where the work crew on the castle, they the villagers were not letting them buy beer at the Jolly Pop Boy. Did I get the name right?
The Inn of the Welcome Wench.
Yeah.
Well, Welcome Wench. I'm sorry. The author Elizabeth Moon duplicated Hamlet for her Paxnerian series in book 2, and I just remember that more than. So anyway,
Jesus Christ, that's a deep dive.
Oh, Jesus!
Oh my God,
it was weird. I was reading the book. This sounds familiar. I'm recognizing this stuff. The Druid Grove. What the? And then I brought up my Village of Hamlet, and I said, "God damn, she made it the Village of Hamlet."
That's awesome.
I mean, everything was in the right part, and the inn was called the Jolly Pot Boy. Anyway, the Inn and Welcome Wench. They couldn't buy their beer from the brewer of the Inn and Welcome Wench without charging an argon leg. And there was one of the the minions of Blair at the Beautiful stirring that stuff up, and the players had to quell a riot. Solve that mystery, so to speak.
There's so much you could do just with Hamlet, because I played it so many times before Temple of Elemental Evil came out.
Yeah.
And you can Hamlet in and of itself, just Hamlet and the moat house.
Yeah.
Is just such a perfect little starter setting.
Yeah.
And just ignore the rest. Ignore Null, ignore the temple. Just that is just so beautiful. I must have done it a dozen times. Just running stuff in Hamlet, and then you go out into the Crown Hills, and there's mines, and there's all kinds.
Verbavon, a couple days away to buy bigger, more expensive stuff. Yeah, it's perfect. It's the perfect micro setting. I mean, like I said, the only thing that came close is Phandalin in my book. I don't know there's any other 2-starter city, town, village things for launching adventures that have ever been written better than Hamlet and Phandalin. I can't think of anything.
Well, Hamlet, I wanted T2 to expand their wilderness around Hamlet, so it's more like Phandalin, and then you would go into the Temple of Elemental Evil with T3 and T4, but no, you got to the Temple of Elemental Evil book.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong, the Temple of Elemental Evil has its own awesomeness, but I think they gave short shrift what happened between them. They have a little bit of detail on Nob, but I don't know. I was looking for more.
Translation from Gygax to Menser. Yes, it absolutely did. And I did my T5, which is the under temple with the thing, and I did my T0 to expand out, just to, like you're saying, to beef it up, to make it more of a setting that you could go for quite a bit of time in. But it did not meet its expectations.
Right.
I actually use Hamlet as a lead-in to the Slaver series.
The what?
I actually use Hamlet as a lead-in to the Slaver series.
Oh, Slaver. I thought it said flavor, like flavor.
So did I. I was expecting, yeah, boy.
Sorry, I have a speech impediment.
That's all right.
My words. No, the Slaver. And, the party got captured so they successfully dealt with what's going on with Hamlet, and then they found out that Lareth the Beautiful was a slaver agent, and that led them to when I was subbing in for Highport, and they got themselves captured there, and that led to an infamous sequence with Tim. They were slaves on a slave gallery, and let's just say that party never looked at the word never heard the word snowflake again without shuddering.
I don't know where that goes.
You're gonna have to ask Tim for the details.
All right.
Yeah, you're getting me. You're scaring me, Rob.
I'll take your word for that.
Yeah, and Tim just said he remembers it taking forever to come out. Yeah, I think it came out in '84. What was T1? 79 and Temple 84. Joe, was that right?
82 or 83? I mean, it was before Gygax left. Okay. I remember, and my God, this is possibly the greatest regret I have in my life. I purchased the first ever sold copy of Temple of Elemental Evil, and Gary Gygax signed it. I forced myself to the front of the line. They opened up the doors at Gen Con. I ran to the thing, and I bought the very first one. And Gary Gygax signed it.
Jesus fuck.
And I sold it.
When you could do the 100-yard dash in 9.8 seconds.
And I sold it like 20 years ago for like $100.
Oh, the price of demand today.
Oh God.
With that pedigree. Holy fuck.
That was the same year that Palladium was giving away these faux vinyl folder things. So I kept it in that all weekend to keep it safe.
Man. Oh my God.
And I think that was the same weekend that Judges Guild was giving away the Book of Treasure Maps because it was miscut.
Okay. I'll take it.
I've never been to Gen Con, but it's on my bucket list. Everybody says now it's not worth it because it's not an RPG game, like gaming convention.
I have not been to Gen Con since it was in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
Oh wow. it's just something I always said to myself, for my, I'm coming up I started gaming in '84, so I'm coming up on 2024. I was said my 40th anniversary of gaming when I go to Gen Con, but I guess it's not a gaming convention no more, so I don't know.
No, it's a
Origins is still pretty much a gaming convention.
Yeah, maybe I'll do that, but definitely next year I'm going to North Texas.
Awesome.
I already got the money put away.
You hear that, Mike?
That's it.
2023. By the way, Mike says Daggerfall for Forgotten Realms under Ilfarn is also very good. I remember running that one, not just from the Forgotten Realms, but reusing that setting because it was a pretty good setting and a pretty good starter.
Really?
I have to look at that. I remember being favorably impressed, but I never used it for some reason.
No, I never actually did either. I never owned it.
Bone Hill, I used the crap out of that. I even drew my own map of Restenford. I'm not going to be digging it out.
What conventions are people going to this year, if any?
North Texas, I'll be there in a couple of weeks. And by the way, just like last year, there will probably be a live stream each night. We're going to be doing a whiskey tasting on one of those nights is one of the live streams. So that was a lot of fun. Hopefully going to get to Gamehole in the fall. ShireCon definitely in September.
Yep, I'll be there for that.
I will be there.
Nice.
Where's ShireCon?
The Berkshires. It's in Western Connecticut.
Yep. You gonna come
it's
up,
a nice little con. It's a one-day thing and
it's beautiful.
Yeah.
I thought Gamehole was a one-day thing.
No, Gamehole is 4 days.
Yeah.
ShireCon is 1 day.
ShireCon is 1 day. It's about 100 or so attendees. Gamehole is probably about 4,000 or 5,000 at this point. It's run like clockwork because a chairman runs it, but Gamehole is a lot of fun. And TotalCon, hopefully I'll be back there next February.
February, yeah, that's another one. Yeah, that's true. I haven't been there since just last time I was there 2 months before the world shut down.
Yeah,
was the last time I saw you. Yeah, for a while.
Weeks before the world shut down.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Here's the thing with ShireCon. Here's the thing with ShireCon too. If you guys want to come up, I've been trying to get Rob and Tim and to get Matt's ass out here and Greg too. It's a Saturday convention, right? You come up on a Friday, you do Saturday there, and then Sunday, what do? We go to New York City, we hit, Complete Strategist, we hang out, have a few beers at a bar. There's your weekend, all right? Day one, the convention.
Except for 8 hours across Pennsylvania, so got to keep that in mind for Sunday.
What, Strats closed on Sunday?
Strats closed on Sunday.
Those fuckers.
Oh,
I didn't realize that. That blows that whole
screws me up all the time.
Yeah, damn, man. Well, maybe do a Friday, Saturday thing then. Come out a day.
Well, remember, Joe, that invitation to go to Cleveland and see the Warzone Matrix is still.
That sounds fun too. That sounds fun too. Yeah.
And I've been to Street Complete Strategist, and I'm sorry, Warzone Matrix, it gets the nudge.
Oh, there's a lot of better stores, but none of them have the mecha-like quality that Complete Strategist does.
It has history. There's certain
Yeah.
It's just a place you got to go to once in your gaming life.
I've been going to the Strategist since 1975.
You guys you and Eric probably ran into each other for God's sakes. Didn't even know it.
I made my mom take me there because I wanted to buy Invasion America, and my best friend Tom bought World War III.
Wow.
And
by GDW? By GDW?
No, SPI.
Okay.
And I actually, when I was after college, I actually worked in the Strategist in Boston.
Wow.
For a while.
Wow. Nice.
But in terms of cons, I'm going to be doing Historicon,
right?
Which is in Lancaster, which is a miniatures wargaming con. It is amazing. It's huge. And it's like coming home. This is what
cool.
I'm out doing, and it's just so much fun.
Don't they have a Traveler Con in Lancaster too?
What is it?
Traveler Con?
I do not know. Off to Google with you.
Yeah. How about DexCon, Joe? Is that still a thing?
What is it?
Weren't you doing DexCon in Jersey for a while? Is that still?
Yeah, they haven't. They're all uber paranoid about COVID, so I don't think it's happening this year. It'll probably happen next year. Okay. I will be vending at ShireCon.
Yeah.
So
you have your Make Greyhawk Great Again hats. Those red hats make Greyhawk great again.
I might have a couple of those left.
All right. That's
the
cool.
make Greyhawk great again.
Yeah.
They're a little less topical now than they were.
But still, a little nostalgia, you know.
I tell you, Joe, I like going to convention and playing the miniature war games. I played it 2 awesome ones. One, the guy had a World War I flying game, and he had the planes on radio antennas, so you can adjust their height.
Yeah, they have that. They have that here. They have that at Historicon. If you go to my blog for 2 years ago, and the year before that, I've got tons of pictures from Historicon. I've picked up so many great games, because that's the great thing about going to a war game con, even more so than an RPG con, is because there's a higher bar to entry on war games, right? You know, for an RPG, you can buy a book for $25 or whatever, $40, and you're in. But for a war game, there's a lot more that you need to invest in to get going on it.
The knowledge base, the personal knowledge base alone.
The knowledge, the figures, you know, all that stuff. And you can pick and choose. I always try to go to all kinds of new games at Historicon. Gnome Wars is a terrific game. It's a silly little miniatures game, and there's all these different gnome factions. And they've got figures for it. And
sounds like your cup of tea.
Gotta get that from Matt.
Yeah, I've definitely got
it. They've got Irish gnomes, and they've got German, Prussian gnomes, and the figures are brilliant. And there's an ancients game, ancients medievals called Triumph that I found there, and it's like my now go-to ancients medieval game. It's just so perfect.
I played in a miniature game where the guy recreated Central Rome on a 4x8 table. And so there were four of us playing, and we each had our faction. And I co-won the game because we were about to run the town, and I said, "Look, I control Capitoline Hill, the Senate building. You got more forces, but to take me, you're going to have a bloody. So here's the deal. I will support you as emperor as long as you make me the commander of the Praetorian Guard." And he thought about it, said, "Sure." And the DM and the referee goes, looks for right. "Hey, we got a game that finished." Apparently never finished them in the 4-hour time block.
It was great. I also saw they had one game that the guy had taken a Playmobil Roman amphitheater and painted it up, you know, like really did it up nice, and did a gladiatorial game in it.
Nice.
And it looked brilliant. I loved it so much. I actually bought a Playmobil Coliseum, and it's sitting in boxes in my room.
Nice.
How big is it?
Oh, it's huge. It's easily 3 foot across.
Oh, wow.
And you can get it on Amazon for like $20. It's nothing. And they have the Circus Maximus game where they actually have the big table laid out. And,
that's at North Texas. They run Circus.
Yeah,
Maximus.
same idea, same thing.
Yeah.
But anyway, I just love the mini wargaming. It's really it's like I say, going back home. And then I'll hopefully be at TotalCon, debating whether to vend or just go to play.
Oh, we had this. My kid, we bought it for my kid, and then we got a bunch of rats. And at the time, I had an apartment instead of the workshop that I'm in now. So we would take this, build it up, and it turned into a playground for the rats that we had.
Nice.
They loved it. They loved going into the gatehouse. And
Marcelo has a good question there. Question for the public, meaning Joe. Is Tharzadan the elder elemental god?
Nope.
Well,
All right, you got your answer. Do you want to say the difference?
It's just they're so different in so many respects. I mean, I know that they tried to make that the canonical thing in Return to the Temple of Elemental Evil, but it doesn't work on any number of levels. In terms of iconography, they're completely different. Tharizdun is about corruption, whereas the Elder Elemental God is about madness. And if you look at the way that the temples in for Lost Temple of Tharizdun versus Hall of the Fire Giant King. If you look at the two different temples, they're completely different in terms of the magical effects, the iconography, the feel of it. They don't match at all, and there's no from a thematical reason. There's no reason to make them the same. It actually cheapens both of them by saying one was really secretly this. It was just really a function of at the time, at the height of the 3E era, they were trying to make Tharizdun the catch-all villain for everything, and
failed.
It was just it didn't work on any number of levels. So no, it's not. And Kenneth, was that Kenneth Haidt? I forget. No. Who did Return of the
Monty Cook's shit.
Monty Cook, that's it. Yeah, and Monty Cook. I don't know what the story was behind him doing that and why he made those creative choices. But I personally don't think they work, and I don't. That
was terrible.
I should ask. I see him at cons every once in a while, and I should really ask because it's just no.
He's a great Greyhawk fan too, which is why I was kind of looking forward to it. And then it came out, and I'm like, "The fuck is this?" Great, you know. And I remember him he was retelling a story about when he actually got to Wizards or wherever it was. I don't know if he was a TSR guy that when it went to Wizards, I forget his lineage there, but he was enawed by the handed down oral tradition of looking at the Darlene Greyhawk map and finding all Gygax's little like funny things that he put in there, like inside jokes. You know, he remember hearing the story of this river is this for this reason, and that mountain chain is named this for that reason. No, all those little things that Gygax put into the map at Greyhawk, and he was just loving every second of it, you know, picking up on all that stuff. And so I was like, God, this guy loves Greyhawk, and he put out this fucking piece of dog shit. You know, what the hell is this?
He did a lot of good stuff. He did. That was the clunker. That was no getting around it.
It was a big disappointment because I loved Temple and I was so looking forward to it. Right.
Well, he also called Greyhawk a picaresque setting at a con at Metatopia a few years ago, and I took issue with that.
That's not,
that's kinda... I'm curious, Joe. What do you think in Playing at the World and other sources and about the people who discovered the original Greyhawk map? You know what I'm talking about?
You mean the Great Kingdom map?
Yeah, the Great Kingdom map. Yes.
Yeah. What about it?
What do you think of it? You know that was the original Greyhawk campaign, as far as I understood.
No. That's really complicated. Here? Sorta.
What's the story? I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, there was in before there was D&D and that stuff. There was a shared war game campaign called The Great Kingdom.
Okay.
And it had a few of the names of the countries were the same, and the vaguest outline of the continent is, you know, you can kind of see where it turned into the Flanaess. You know, if I don't have it handy, but I'm sure Rob does. He's got everything.
I posted the link in the private chat.
See, exactly. He's got everything. That was not actually, as far as I'm aware, the original map for the Greyhawk campaign. That was an inverted version of North America, which is different than the Great Kingdom map, even though it shared a lot of names. And then when they were going to publish the campaign, that's when he made the map that would eventually become the Darlene map. And that was the published version. So you've got, you know, all these different layers of what was what. One thing that always baffles me about that Great Kingdom map, though, I'm going to everybody click on that link and
visual aid.
Wait a minute, that's different.
Oh. Yeah, that's somebody who has an updated. There's two.
Yeah,
of them.
somebody mucked with this.
No. This is somebody else from back in the day. This is from mucked with back in the day.
Right, but the version that I've seen, see down in the lower right where it says Eastern Ocean.
Yeah.
The version that I've seen says Western Ocean. And that always baffled me because it's not west, it's east, but I've not seen that, and it honestly, the writing looks different than some of the writing in the elsewhere.
It's been written over, and I see where a piece of tape was at one point. It looks like,
Yeah.
or no, it looks like a sunlight fading.
No, Rob, you have given me something. I'm going to make a blog post out of this.
Are you on the old D&D discussion forum by any chance?
No, I don't go on message boards other than Cannon Fire anymore.
All right.
I'm not. Between everything.
By the way, I did find the image you're talking about. Yes, you were right. There's two versions. You know, this one got published in. Oh, darn it! Hold on.
2017. It looks like.
Yeah.
Dave McGarry, circa 2017.
Yeah, Dave McGarry had that in his collection, but the original one was found elsewhere, and it was this one.
Oh, we got another link.
Hold on a second.
That one, the one I just posted, was published in Playing On, and McGarry said, "Hey,
right.
I have this."
This is the one I was thinking of, where it says Western Ocean, but it's not in the West.
Interesting.
So
just to fuck with you, Gary.
Made me wonder what the hell's going on.
Yeah. Interesting. Great Bay. Yeah, I see it. This I could see more Greyhawk. This is I could definitely see Greyhawk.
You see that? You see the lake of unknown depths, the near dive, the dry step.
Totally.
Dust, this is sort of kind of recognizable.
Yeah. The other one was not at all to me.
But the other one does have the near dive.
Yeah, names.
It's got the name, the dry step.
Yeah.
Well, you got to remember, this was a shared campaign by a lot of people. So when the McGarry one popped up, it was obvious that it was his copy of this. One of the my understanding, there are multiple copies of this map floated around, because this one's hand drawn, his was hand drawn.
Oh, I don't doubt it. In fact, Walworth. And you notice how the Great Kingdom is all divided up like that into the numbered provinces. That almost reminds me of diplomacy.
Well, they did use diplomacy rules to manage the.
And a lot of the earliest stuff about D&D, the articles and stuff, appeared in diplomacy zines. When Gygax is talking about how to set up a D&D campaign in a diplomacy magazine.
There's Marcelo throwing another one out for you there, Joe. I have another question for Joe, if it wasn't asked already. How do you recommend closing GDQ without Q1, which I agree sucked ass? What would be an interesting continuation to D3?
Q2!
Boom! Which is
a free download on my blog.
Do you have it? Click the link. Put the link in the private chat. Eric can put it up there.
I'm gonna put the links for all of Joe's stuff up as a pinned note after this, so folks come back in like 30 minutes after we wrap up,
or go to greyhawkgrognard.com.
Yeah. I wasn't going to link every single adventure. I was going to link to Joe's site.
Oh, that too. That's even better. But what I have written a couple of follow-ups to the whole GDQ thing. I've written a D4 City of Spiders, which is an urban adventure in Errol Haikinlu, which lets the PCs figure out all the information they need to finish the adventure. Mm-hmm. And then I've also done a Q2, which is a replacement for Q1, which actually brings back the plot line with the Elder Elemental God. The map actually looks like a spider web. I personally think it's much better than Q1, and that is my recommendation: is go to my blog, download the free modules, and use that as your ending.
And Joe, you have a Patreon, right? I mean, because
I also have
free. I've been hearing a lot of free here, but motherfuckers got to make some money. So you got a Patreon, right?
I do. Oh yeah, post that link to the Patreon.
That's He's got to make some money. Well, it's free for us. Doesn't mean it's free for Joe.
Well,
Joe puts in a lot of time and effort, money, his own resources. I mean, yeah. So
now, do you share specific Greyhawk things on your not reproduction of product, but stuff building on Greyhawk? Do you share that on your Patreon?
Yes and no. I mean, there's not exclusive stuff that you can only get on the Patreon, But the Patreons get advanced views of all my videos. They get input into what I'm working on. They get, behind the scenes looks and stuff like that. But mostly, and the Patreons also get copies of my quarterly modules, depending on the level. You'll either get a PDF or you'll get it at cost, or you'll get me I'll sign you a copy and mail it to you, depending on the level. So yeah, in that sense. But it's mostly because every hour I can spend working on actual Greyhawk stuff, because it's supported by the Patreons, is an hour that I don't have to be working on stuff for sale.
Fair enough.
The more I can get from Patreon, the less I have to the less I have to worry about, okay, I need to come up with the next product that I'm going to sell on the web store.
Yep.
I could more. That means more free stuff on the blog, more of the Dragon magazine stuff, more of the Beyond the Flunnis stuff.
Yep, here's the link, Eric. I'll put it in the private. You can drop it out there.
Patreon link's up already.
Oh, is it? Oh, you beat me to it. Perfect. Perfect. Boom, boom. There you go.
But I will put all this stuff as a pinned comment, so folks that are watching this later, or if you're watching it now and you want an easy reference, I'm gonna have links to Joe's store at Drive-Thru. We'll have Joe's Patreon up. We'll have his blog up. We'll have the Kickstarter link. All easy. By the way, I think we picked up 5 backers during.
Nice. Yeah, we're at 603, and we're closing in on $8,500, which is great.
Nice, very well done.
And I'm gonna join your Patreon. I'm gonna pop in at the orc level there, Joe.
Oh, thank you.
Boom, boom.
Even at the orc level, you get all kinds of cool stuff, and
PDFs and everything. It's good.
Yeah. So but really the big thing about the Patreon, it lets me make more free stuff.
Yeah.
That's really what it's about. I would love to not ever have to make another thing for sale. If I could manage that, no one would be happier than I, and I would just post. I'd be constantly posting stuff on my blog.
This your full-time gig, Joe?
No.
Oh, I was wondering. All right. I was like,
God, no. I got a mortgage. You kidding?
And a book collection to keep up. I see behind you there.
I got a book habit.
Yeah. You got to feed that book habit, man. I get it. Trust me, I know. It's like, fuck, I got more. Where am I going to put these? God damn it. There's no space.
I literally in my bedroom, I've got stacks of boxes of books that I just took off. I rotate.
Yeah.
I rotate them out of the shelf because I've just got too many books.
Helps with the feng shui of the whole house, you know?
Yeah. You literally can't get into the bed from one side because there's so many boxes of books.
That's funny. That's a kind of good idea. I should dedicate a bookshelf to rotate, because I moved from the old place to this place. I lost probably about 3 bookshelves full of shit. They're down in the storage room downstairs. And I'm like, I can't get rid of it, but I can't justify keeping it. So if I rotate it in, it justifies its existence.
I've been in this shop for 7 years and I still haven't unboxed my Dragon magazine.
Oh God. Yeah. Yep.
Oh, don't talk to me about Dragon magazines. I did a dreadful thing.
No, you did. No, did you get rid of them? Did you go through a crack phase in the 90s, Joe? Was this what's going on here? You have to sell your shit for crack?
This would have been 94,
even
95,
worse.
something like that. I had every Dragon magazine from number 37 through current.
Right.
And I moved, and I just chucked them.
Oh no.
Dude.
Yeah, I started with Dragon magazine number 38. And it's funny, if I only knew about it a few issues earlier, I would have seen the AD&D DMG addendum that Gygax published in Dragon to get people started with the Player's Handbook. And I would have been playing AD&D a whole year earlier than I did in actual.
There you go.
See, now,
I was in junior high. We knew enough. We played war games, but we didn't know enough how to build this shit on our own because we just read the rules, and the only rules we had that were complete went up the 3rd level and then the home box set. We weren't aware of OD&D. In fact, I didn't discover OD&D until 1980 when I thought, "What's this white box?" Started reading.
We started with the white box. we started with war games. Like I said, we in 1975 we were going to the Strat to buy Avalon Hill and SPI games.
Yeah.
But I bought the white box, and I was like 9 or 10 or something, and I couldn't make heads or tails of it because I'd seen it in catalogs and in mentions and places, but I couldn't possibly figure out how to do this. And then I saw the Holmes Basic set, which goes to level 3, and that made perfect sense. And then almost, we played that for a summer, and then we bought the AD&D stuff as it was starting to come out in 77. So I'm the same way. It's like we started with Holmes, but we almost immediately went to AD&D.
Yeah, I was in war games by the time I was in 6th grade, and the first time I heard of D&D was my best friend turned frenemy. I don't know what went into his head, but he wasn't not a nice person after that. He teased me. I got freaking teased for not knowing what Dungeons and Dragons was. And because we had a lot of animosity, my reply to him, of course I know what it is. I didn't know what it was, but I found out shortly thereafter because I went to Boy Scouts, and what we did on our downtime, especially in the winter, was play D&D. And some of the older scouts had D&D books, so I started when I first became aware of it, the Monster Manual was out, but not the Player's Handbook.
Right.
And at some point, I don't remember when, I got the Holmes box set, and then me and my best friend at the time were eagerly waiting the Player's Handbook because finally we can go beyond level 3. So we split the cost, $5 each for the Player's Handbook, and we rolled dice to see who would get to take it home first. And I got it. And I rolled. I read through it, and I'm a fast reader. I was like, no, there's no combat charts. And I called, and I looked at it. His parents were very strict about phone calls after 8:00, and I looked at it was 7:55. So I called him up. I said, John, I got to be quick about this, but it's incomplete. What do you mean? The Player's Handbook is incomplete. It doesn't have any combat charts. No. So a year later, it was the summer of '79, and I was badgering my local game store owner, State Street Model. Has the DMG guy come in? And finally she said yes. And I Dad, you got to take me down the State Street Model. Well, Rob, I got an errand to run. My dad's a real nice guy. And I got an errand to run. Please, Dad, it's important. I'll just tag along and I'll keep quiet. Okay. So I went in there, dashed in, paid my $15, got it. And I read that and I was quiet. It's like, wow. My dad later said to me, wow, you must have really liked that book.
So what was your first war game, Rob?
Africa Corps.
Tactics 2.
Avalon Hill.
Tactics 2.
Tactics 2 was my second one, and I didn't lose a game of Tactics 2 until the late 90s when I played a friend that I made at LARPs. And the kid was a freaking genius. He didn't know the game, never played it. So what's the point? What's my tactic here? Well, you have to get 3-to-1 odds. Oh, okay. And the Tactics 2, the movement rules are pretty straightforward. So what does he do? I go in there. I'm not doing badly, but he proceeds to line up all his shit in perfect 3-to-1 arrays across the board, like a dozen at one time, and just annihilated me. He could just visualize it in the head in a way I couldn't, and it's just like.
Well, they do have that weird rule that every unit that's contiguous with another unit has to attack, even if the odds, even if you're focusing these squares against that one, everything has to attack. So they did have that weirdness, but yeah.
So that was the first game it took me almost 15 years, but I lost my first Tactics 2 game.
I remember I must have been 8 years old. I borrowed it from a friend of mine because I saw it and I was like, what is this? And they let me borrow it. And all summer long, I'm like 7 or 8, and I'm reading the rules over and over and over. And I'm sitting on my bed till like 2, 3, 4 in the morning. trying to figure out how to play this game, and I finally got it done, and then it was just that was.
I know. I found Africa Core in the attic. My dad got it or something. I don't know what the deal was. Maybe he got it during that first wave of Avalon Hill popularity in the '60s. I don't know, but it was a vintage Africa Core, and I found it when I was, like seven. It was like had to have been '77, the summer of Star Wars. Boy, that was a good summer. Anyway, I figured it out, and then I found a friend who had a huge wall of his room was covered with war games. Unfortunately, that's where I learned where my great white whale of war games was, and that was to beat him at 1776, which I could never ever do at the British or the Americans. He always killed me.
You guys ever you remember Delta's D&D blog spot? Remember that guy?
Oh yeah.
He put out that book, which was fantastic, Delta's Book of War. And I thought it was an amazing book because it brought like miniature combat to a practical player like me who had no experience in war games. The Stratego and chess. That was it, right? That was my whole wargaming experience. And so he brought down to a good scale how to have characters in a war, how to have PCs in a war with battle on a smaller scale, not a massive, world-ending kind of a war. But he's a computer geek, a programmer, and he ran the numbers to balance it so that, what is the capability of 3 trolls versus few PCs of certain level. He balanced it all out based on thousands of simulations done on the computer, which made it all sort of make sense. So it's just a well-done book. The Book of War, Delta's D&D blog.
I posted a link to it. But for me, nothing beats Battle System 1E. The reason why I like Battle System 1E, because the heart of it is a dice rolling engine that answers the simple question. If I have X guys all swinging the weapon, how many hit dice of damage are they going to do? So, and the way it's set up, I can use it for any edition of D&D except for 4E.
That was the red one, right, Rob? The red battle system. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. That came along with the Bloodstone stuff too. Remember the Bloodstone and the gnomes and the down. Yeah, that was.
Yeah, I didn't really use that, but I used battle system. Tim knows about this. The most terrifying thing I did for the players was we were playing a campaign. They were relatively high level, and there was a point where I decided to destroy the Wireland, and the climactic battle was they were fighting this battle using battle system. And they won it, and with the troops they collected, and with them fighting themselves, and then because at that time Battle System had a whole bunch of dragon tokens because of the Dragon Lance, I had like 36 of these guys, and I lined up. I say the second wave comes in, and I lined up all the dragons, and they went, "Oh no, we're doomed."
Swords and Spells, which was the mass combat thing for the white box,
right?
Mm-hmm. That did the same kind of thing. You didn't really roll dice. It just kind of boiled down all the hit dice and stuff into a table, and it was just kind of an attrition thing.
Yeah,
but see, Battle System, you could take a D&D stat, whether it's 5th edition, 3rd edition, 2E, 1E, or OD&D. And everything on that will translate over.
Yeah.
And the secret sauce is 2 things. They use what they call random binary distribution, which tells you if you have 10 guys swinging a weapon and they need a 15 better to hit, what are the odds? 1 of them will hit. 2 of them will hit. None of them will hit. And somebody did a really clever job, which I haven't been able to figure out, of creating this combined table. And the other secret sauce was they don't bother with hit points. They just equated everything to 1d8 hit dice. So, if you were swinging a short sword, which is 1d6, you roll damage and then you shift over 1 column because you were doing a d6 instead of a d8. And you just figured out how many hit dice of creatures you killed. Because everything had a hit dice in D&D.
Right. And that's what Swords and Spell does.
It does?
Yeah, it boils everything down to hit dice versus hit dice, and it takes the average times the to hit against the armor class, and it just kind of maps all the math out like that. So
I thought it just did a percentage, and if you miss the percentage, you don't get it all.
Well, it's kind of an attrition kind of thing. It's weird.
Huh, I'll have to read it again.
See, with me, Math Combat in my D&D was always exciting the first time I ran it. And then after that, I never wanted to do it again. It's like that was just not worth the lead up to this. It was more useful for me to figure out things that were going to happen off screen or off the table. All right, well, this battle's going to happen. All right, if I want to be able to present what happened, all right, I'll spend half an hour running this battle before we, as I'm figuring out what's going to happen in the game session, because doing it at the table is just too much. But I'm going to say this right now. We are past the witching hour. We are coming up in 2.5 hours.
Holy cow.
A bunch of old men here with, bladders. We're going to probably be...
I got to take a leak. Yeah.
So,
I was about to say I really enjoyed feeling so young tonight.
Greg, you're there? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I can't really effectively speak on products that came out before I was born.
Oh, geez. All right.
Well, it doesn't stop half the OSR from having an opinion on it.
That's true.
Fair enough. Listen, I want to sincerely thank Joe Bloch because time flew. I swear to God. I've known Joe for years. The first time we met in person was at the Brooklyn Strat with the release.
Right, for the Gygax magazine thing.
Well, that was a cold fucking day. Online. Oh my God! But no, we've known each other from online prior to that, but that's when I first got to actually meet Joe. So I want to thank Joe. I want to thank the rest of the miscreants that you see here every 2 weeks, pretty much. I'm going to have all of Joe's links and maybe links for Rob too. Rob was like our second special guest, although he's here every episode. So we'll link his stuff. Listen, we're in the midst of the world of.
Before you go into that spiel, Eric.
Yes.
There's one thing we fucked up the last time we had the show.
We
could not fuck up before we leave this show.
We got to make fun of Matt?
Absolutely. Matt Jackson wears tighty whities. Okay, continue.
All right.
I already dropped a Matt joke.
Yeah,
did you? We missed it. Shit.
No, there was a Matt joke earlier on.
All right, cool.
Yeah, he was talking about the gnome
came during
supplement.
the comment about the gnome miniature.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
all right, that's good.
I actually said that'd be great for Matt. So we were working off each other. So.
That's good. Yeah, as long as we get a shot in, because the last time, all I gotta say is the last time I didn't mention Matt, and I came down with the beer bug. I don't want that to happen to anybody else. So we have to summon Matt to everything and bust his balls so nobody gets sick.
All right. So the
Before
inside,
before you do this, may I read one spell description from the book?
Oh yeah,
go ahead.
Does Rob
as long as it doesn't summon Cthulhu to the show. Is he going to make an appearance here? Are we gonna...
Yeah.
Does it involve gnomes or ladders?
No. This is the agony of the black goat. The spell causes one creature in range of the caster at his choice to immediately have a great growth within its abdomen or corresponding location. This growth will, in the space of a single round, swell to the size of a melon, causing crippling pain in the process. If the target is wearing non-metal armor, they will take 2d6 damage before the armor is rent asunder. If they wear metal armor, they will take 4d6, but their armor will remain intact. The pain caused by the growth prevents any sort of spellcasting or fighting, even as movement is limited to 3 inches per round. The agony will remain until the mass is removed, either by surgery or magic. Surgery by an unskilled hand will cause an additional 2d4 hit points damage and require a system shock roll in order to avoid outright death. The 6th level cleric spell heal will completely heal the target, and Keoktiman's ointment will do so in 1 to 3 turns. Cure spells and potions of healing will not remove the mass, but will heal the associated damage.
Brutal.
So,
you're
body horror.
Everybody. I was figuring that you have one additional skip and you cut that thing open, a goat flies out or something.
Nice.
I've actually got another spell in here that pieces of you pop off and little simulacrums of you attack you.
Oh,
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
I think I did that one in the last on the last
that's
show.
clever. That's like PG-13, but very horrifying.
Yeah.
There you go. Well,
So yes, body horror, and it's Lovecraft, so it's going to be awful.
It's a win for all. So, by the way, folks, if you are playing COVID bingo, you could probably close off 3 of your cards with the cards that are on the 5 cards that are on the screen right now. Okay, just putting that into perspective. So when I say we're still in the midst of the world of COVID, we are still in the midst of the world of COVID. I am not your father. None of us here are your parent. We're not going to hold your hand. We're not going to tell you what to do. All right, common sense.
Who is your daddy?
Who's your daddy? Not me. I'll tell you that much. Other than that, be safe, be well. God bless. Roll those dice. Roll them well. I'll be back tomorrow with Rach at 8 p.m. We'll be doing a Gamer's Health. And I guess the normal craziness after that. God help us. Oh, and thanks to Foogly for all the great artwork that he's been forwarding my way.
Is that who's been doing it? Yeah.
Yeah,
It was scary how well he looked like me. I'm like, fuck, I'm not that fat. Jesus Christ.
Again, Joe, Foogly asked me, did Joe the lawyer used to look like this?
Yeah.
There you go.
I did lose a couple, but yeah, still like motherfucker. How many chins are there?
I'll see if we can do one that's a bit more svelte.
Svelte. Just put a picture of my face in a thinner, stretch it out, make it thinner, put it on Fabio's body. That kind of sums me up today. Give or take a couple pounds, you know.
Some things aren't even possible with magic, Joe.
Yeah.
I find as I get older, I'm going from svelte to zaftig.
I've never been svelte.
No, I never been svelte, man.
All right, folks.
I've had a great time, guys. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Joe.
Yep.
It was just
Thanks
fun,
for
man.
being on, Joe.
We're out of here.